Support for the Dead Radio podcast comes from The Crafted Cup, Poughkeepsie's premier coffee house at 44 Raymond Avenue in Poughkeepsie. Prime Print Shop at 747 Main Street in Poughkeepsie, serving the Hudson Valley's professional, municipal, and educational communities with full-service copies, plotting, scanning, and custom printing. And also, viewers like you. Underwriting support provided by Matt Kovich, Adam Merritt, Julia Farisi, Anthony Lavelle, and Track 7 Studios.
This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life.
Welcome to Dead Radio.
We're not doing that.
How did she come to have sex with a dead man?
Don't call me Radio Unit 91.
You're a dead man. You're a dead man!
He's God here in this radio station.
Place where the dead speak.
Rebel Radio!
I'm a fake? Yes. How'd you like to be dead?
You ever think about doing radio?
My team is dead!
But you're not crazy. You're me. And this is just radio.
By the powers vested in me by the Federal Communications Commission, I command you to get on the microphone in a serious manner and continue this broadcast.
Okay. All right. Here we all are.
Welcome.
Another Monday night. Another episode of the Dead Radio podcast.
Still having problems over here.
It's the box.
Yeah.
Try that. All right, everybody. Episode 173.
Seems better.
All right. Here we are.
Did you share to Facebook?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Life thoroughly sucked out of me from talking about technical audio shit after my shift at the Cup. It's like, I got this project I'm doing. Oh, great. Somebody at the Crafted Cup at 44 Raymond Avenue in Poughkeepsie asked me about some just audio, like technical audio shit, and it was just not, like, I was just like, I don't want to deal with this right now. Nice guy. Kevin, right?
Steve.
Okay. I swear to God his name was Kevin, but oh well.
Nope, it is, unless I'm wrong, but I've been calling him Steve for a couple of years now.
Oh, shit. Well, anyway, yeah. So, yeah, welcome, everybody. We have Mike Doyle in the house. Hi, Mike.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, I guess we've been you've been mentioning coming on the show for a while now, and we've just been like, nah.
We'll let you know.
And here you are.
Wait until
Don't
we're
call
desperate.
us, we'll call you.
But, yeah, well, you're finally here. Mike used to work for us at, well, not for us, with us is a better way to put it, at the Crafted Cup. But he couldn't cut the mustard and had to go get a desk job.
Pretty much, yeah. That was.
Mike's also a would you consider yourself former or current stand-up comedian?
I dabble.
Just
So
dabble.
I wrote a bunch lately. I actually have been trying to organize all my material and be like, if I wanted to do an hour, like, could I put this in some sort of logical progression instead of just like getting up and winging it every week? But yeah, it's coming along. But
an hour's tough, man. Professional comedians takes them 2 years to get their hour down.
Fucking
I
5
got
minutes
enough
is scary.
material, but
Yeah.
I just like I can't imagine memorizing it and having it all like
cohesive.
Yeah,
because
because I don't know.
It's practice.
Yeah.
Same way you get to Carnegie Hall. It's
Well,
practice.
you know what I think is going to be wise is to break it up into like topical segments and be like,
Yeah,
instead of
well,
trying to memorize the hour, be like, all right, I got the first 15 down, then I got the second 15 down, and take it from there.
It all depends on. I guess it all depends on your your flow too. You got guys like with David Tell who just stand up there and they go, "Okay, here's a joke," and then it's the joke, and then the next one is a joke
that has nothing to do with the last one.
yeah, and next thing is a joke. But then you got guys like I don't know, Bill Burr, where it seems to be like a 20-minute story.
Yeah,
of the same
and
fucking topic.
The first 18 minutes of it isn't funny.
Yeah,
it's just it's engaging, and then the last 2 minutes are the funniest shit you've ever heard.
Okay,
so I don't know. I could see your style kind of turning into that if you had a full hour.
Yeah, because
you're a storyteller.
Yeah, I'm more. I never aspired to comedy. It was actually somebody in an AA meeting that was like, "Oh, you should do comedy," because I was just grumbling because I was on a bunch of workout supplements and they had turned me into like a raging asshole, and like it was just like, having like rage attacks and like just ready to bitch people out on Facebook, like shit that I just don't do.
They're actually called steroids.
Yeah, no, it was creatine. I can't handle.
Fucking creatine!
Yeah,
I don't think you can even get that anymore. Can you?
You can, yeah.
You can get creatine.
No, it's like the staple of the meathead regimen. But yeah,
I think it's in smaller doses now. Like you got to take a bunch of extra pills. But
I remember my dad. He
turns me
loved
into like
that
Mr.
shit.
Hyde. Yeah, it's like, and, I'm not like that naturally. So it's like but I was in Florida. I just thought everyone was an asshole and an idiot, and I was just
well, you're not wrong.
And then I went back off of it, and I was like,
they're either stupid or a jerk. That's what I've encountered.
In Florida?
You have for the most part, it's the people that like grew up there. The people that move there tend to be a little bit better, but they're not very good drivers still because they're 100. But
I met some of the loveliest people ever in Florida, and like made a handful of really good friends down there, and then like met some of the most aggravating people I've ever met.
Yeah, it's just a guy on a crotch rocket with fucking sandals and a tank top and his fucking frosted tips and no helmet. Like that's what I think of when I think of Florida.
How cool is he accurate?
Doing 115
I mean, it'd
down
probably
the
be
fucking highway.
Probably be a scooter, frankly. I had a friend when I was like, because I loved the weather there and loved going to the beach, but I just kind of was sick of it after 2 years. And my friend, I was like, I think I might check out LA, and he goes, "Don't get too excited about LA. LA is just Florida without the obesity and motorized scooters." And I was like, okay. And I went to LA, and I was like, that sounds about right.
How I'm helping people along. I know this, but you grew up here and then you moved out to LA.
No.
And,
I grew up in LaGrangeville.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you want to keep guessing?
No.
No, grew up in LaGrangeville.
You shut me down, and now it's your fucking party now.
As far as you got. I grew up in LaGrangeville outside Poughkeepsie. I went to school in Boston, lived in New York City for a few years, doing nonprofit work. Health and human rights stuff mostly. Went back to school for a little bit, thinking I wanted to be a doctor. That didn't go well, but then just all the more respect for healthcare professionals, but like no longer convinced that I'm meant to be one of them. So and then moved to Florida around when I got sober, and did 2 years in Austin, and now I'm back. Hometown.
Jesus Christ,
homecoming queen.
You like to hop around.
I do, yeah.
So I want to know about LA. I really do. Like I don't really have like questions. I'm just like, what's it like? This is the only question I have because I've never been to the West Coast. I really want to go, but I want to go to LA because of the comedy scene right now is just out of control. Guys just playing, the Comedy Store is just packed with, killers right now, and that's all I know about LA. That's all I want to know about LA. Everybody else is like, "Oh, don't go there."
Yeah, I would go for, a long weekend to go check out some comedy, but there's no I have no desire to be there for more than 24 hours just from what I've heard. Just the traffic. I can't deal with traffic. I hate traffic.
Yeah, but you're not driving when you're visiting.
Not when you're visiting, no. But you're still going to spend 45 minutes in Uber to go 12 miles sometimes.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah, you'll just crawl. Like you just kind of. That's why everyone wants a convertible so they can kind of work on their tan while they're stuck in traffic. But,
how'd you like it?
I mean, I've only been there 3 times, for short visits. But I went in college and visited friends, and then once right after college. Both of those were great trips. I went on my own after a wedding that was in Palm Springs. I want to say 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, almost 3 years ago, and I love my friends that live there. I wouldn't want to live there. I don't know. it's like I'm like a gruff, grumbly, like happy to be disgruntled New Yorker, and just it's like a lot of people just desperate to get famous, and like every waiter's an aspiring actor, and it's
overly nice. Is that it, or just fake nice kind of thing?
I get a fake nice vibe, like, and some of the girls that I know that lived out there, like, it's very hard to make girlfriends there because everyone's kind of like, hey, oh my God, I love you, Mean Girls type shit that, like, it's very hard to find authentic girl friendships, out there. Whether or not that's true, I've never, lived there long term, but, yeah, I like New Yorkers because New Yorkers, if they don't like you, they'll be like, I don't fucking like you, and it's very direct, and it's like and then you're impatient. You're like, I'm moving on from this because I don't have time to not like you. I got shit to do. Like,
When I was in Texas on a job, I was there for like a month and a half, and everybody there was, it's a Southern charm, whatever the fuck it is. And everybody there is like super nice, and they want to talk to you, and they want to have a conversation. And my first reaction is like, "What the fuck do you want? Do you want money?
Yeah,
is that what you want? You here to pitch sales? Yeah. No, they just wanted to talk." And I'm like, "This is weird. It creeps me out. People are too fucking friendly in the South, and makes me nervous. Like they're gonna get you if you."
I had the same experience. I was in the Denver airport on the way to a conference when I was in the nonprofit world. I stopped at McDonald's, and the guy was like, "So first time in Denver?" And I was like, "Aren't you just supposed to like ask me if I want fries with that and like hate your life? Like I'm crankier than you are, and like you're working in fast food right now. Like it's just like But no,
the way it is here is like
interested in how my day was going.
Yeah, it's like, hey, how you doing? Fine. How are you? I'm fine. We don't want to know anything past that. That's just the pleasantry of working in food service. It's just like, I'm great. I had a really great day with my daughter today, and they start telling a whole story, and I'm like, lady, you got a line here. Like, I was only trying to be nice.
Did she get hit by a car? Because that would make the story a lot better.
It would end the story quickly, at least.
I had one of those today, and I was just like, oh God, no. No, I don't want to do this. I just want.
Was it while I was there?
Give me coffee. I don't remember. It was just like today has been a blur. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and because I thought it would be better to stay up and watch Leah Remini's Scientology show.
I've been watching Wild Country.
Keep drinking, and well, it's very similar. Yeah. I'm gonna start watching that.
It's nuts, dude. It's so good. It's about a cult in Oregon in the 80s. Yeah.
I saw this advertised. And people are like, you got to get into it.
Yeah, because especially the first couple episodes, you're like, this is great. I wish they were still doing this. I'd go out there. It sounds awesome.
Right.
It's just peace and love, and like they don't preach really anything crazy. It's just kind of like, you can worship God if you want, but it's really about meditation and being free. I'm like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And they turn this like shithole of a rocky desert into like a great, like beautiful farmland, and you're like, this is awesome. This is great. And then obviously it takes a turn. Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't be entertaining if it was just, and then they built a utopia. Nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah, that's fucking boring. I want to see some blood and guts.
The fucked up thing is like, if they just left them alone, it would have been fine. They would have just been there in their own version of utopia, and it would have been fine. But then they got some pushback, and then they decided they had to take over the whole state. And I mean, there was 10,000 of them.
Wow.
Like it was possible in a state with a population of maybe 1 million or 2 at the time. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It might be
shit.
that Christian fear kind of thing, maybe.
No, it's just they were being labeled as a sex cult.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, yeah.
I stand by what I said.
So you mean like you don't mean fear of Christians? You mean Christians being afraid of different
them?
Things? Okay,
yeah.
I just misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, no.
I misunderstood your meaning. That's all.
Yeah, actually, are you cool to talk about your project, or did you not want to? Yeah. And I was going to talk to you before we started the show, and then we just kind of started the show about the audio and everything like that, but we'll talk after about that. But Mike emailed us recently about helping out with a documentary, you want to call it? Or
yeah, we can say that.
A documentary. Explain it a little bit better, because I might butcher it like your history.
Give me that.
Should have rehearsed my elevator speech for this.
That shit.
Yeah, the idea... I've been dreaming this up for a while. mostly gay man, part of the LGBT community.
It's like 60% of the
no,
time.
I'm like 80. Like
80%
yeah,
of
but
the
and
time.
then I get a bisexual flare up here and there, but for the most part it's been smooth sailing lately. But this is not going well. This is not part of the elevator speech, nor is it related to the project. But yeah. So
isn't the elevator speech an LA term? Where you
like why I'm bad at this?
I'm gonna you recognize someone in an elevator and you try and pitch them your movie idea.
Oh, okay.
The idea is you have like until you get to the 10th
Yeah.
floor to get out,
I get
like,
it.
the
Okay.
idea and have them go, oh, I'm buying into this. The idea is a lot of LGBTQ plus people have struggles with either internal acceptance or acceptance in their families or communities. And I, growing up, had a lot of issues reconciling being Catholic with being gay, or I was attracted to both guys and girls for a lot of my life, so it was easier to fall prey to this suggestion that it was a temptation.
Ah, yes, the devil.
And that was, get thee behind me, Satan. But
Hail, Satan.
There we go. So the idea would be to, instead of like having a shouting match between the LGBTQ community and like the religious right, where nothing really gets accomplished, if you come at this from a mental health angle and say that people who have trouble with either internal or external acceptance often wind up with depression or anxiety or addiction or suicidal tendencies, and that's sort of stuff you can quantify, and it's also treatable, and it activates the compassion in people that says, nobody wants to suffer from those things. So we're hoping that that's going to be an inroad for discussion, because for me, my family was fine. I have really loving, accepting parents, and I couldn't ask for better people. For me, the struggle was all internal, as I'm going to hell or I'm sinful or all this shit that just made the world a very scary place. But once I started to talk about that, I find there's a lot of discussion in, I just call it the gay community rather than the whole alphabet soup, of... Never heard that?
Nope, I love it.
Yeah. Well, you can't say that.
The alphabet soup.
You can, but,
No, we call it that, yeah. We talk about healthy sexuality all day. Nobody talks about healthy spirituality, and I think putting spirituality in terms of, like, is this healthy, like this belief system, or is it damaging me, or is it damaging other people? I think it could raise some interesting discussions, and a lot of people that I've opened up to will come back and go, holy shit, I've never told anyone this, but either I wrestled with this as a kid or I'm still wrestling with this, and that's fascinating to me. So
I'm just really interested to hear from the side of the gay community that's still involved in the church. That's what fascinates me the most out of all of it. I get certain, but with Christianity, there's so many different sects of it that some are like, yeah, no, it's fine, and others are like, no, not allowed. Yeah. It's really, it's very strange, and it's all up to interpretation is the whole thing. But I mean, how many times can you fucking interpret it?
Yeah,
there's hundreds of interpretations at this point.
Yeah. Within the same denomination, you can have very liberal priests, and then you could have very conservative priests. So the same. It's not like the Catholicism. Has the Pope and the Vatican, so it's kind of like a top-down. This is the party line, and this is what we're doing.
And it's pretty much whatever the individual Pope says.
And
you know what I mean?
Well, the problem in Catholicism, as I understand it right now, is that the Pope Francis is pushing things forward as fast as I think he can without getting poisoned, because that's what they do to popes that deviate from the party line too quickly. But the cardinals and the sort of senior clergy that are I shouldn't call them middle management, but
they are
for the church. That's where it's hard to make change. So but
they're a combination of a business and a cult. They are. You know what I mean? They're worth billions, trillions even.
It's a long and storied institution. But having grown up in the church, one of the interesting part of my story is growing up, one of my aunts was a Catholic nun, and she was the most loving person you've ever met in your entire life. I call her the boogie boarding nun because she would take us to Jones Beach every summer, and we'd go boogie boarding. And she just, she just radiated love and acceptance and joy, and was fun to be around. It was magnetic, and just... God is love was her thing, and she took issue with the church on a number of things, and she liked the new pope because she said he's trying to get the focus away from crotch issues like abortion or homosexuality and back to like how do we take care of the poor and the people that are struggling in this society, so having heard some really homophobic things growing up, and then also heard some really, from priests that, like, my parents, to their credit, never brought us back to those parishes. That's the shittier side of the church. But I also saw her and, like, the, kind of badass Brooklyn nuns that she hung out with that were all about soup kitchens and, like, social justice and service and that, so I got to see how good the church can be. So having had both of those experiences, that's why I step into this kind of translator role between people that go, this is all bullshit, and then the people that swallow everything, hard line. And I go, actually, there's some legitimate things that the church does in communities. So people need community, like they do provide a social good, but like anything else, it's got a light side and a dark side.
Yeah. I've always had a hard time finding a balance between, I totally gave up religion a while ago, and
yeah, I guess it should be stated that we're both fairly staunch atheists.
Yeah, but I'm more of like, I have a hard time being like, well, if that's what you believe, that's fine. Like I lean more in that direction, but there's some times where I just want to be a militant, psychopath and be like, what is fucking wrong with you? You have a mental problem? That's your problem. You have a mental problem. That's why you worship God.
Well, some people do.
But
some people it's an addiction, and some people they can't handle the fact that they might be wrong or the place that they were raised in might be wrong. That kind of, and it's like I think the really shitty ones are the minority, and the institution is more what I have a problem with, which is, I think, what we spoke of, like, they're going to poison the Pope because he didn't fucking, follow that bigoted line. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the biggest issue that I take with the church. It's like, now you're hurting people, So it's like you're an organization that says that this is wrong. So the individual who's speaking out against it, who happens to be a part of that organization, isn't the majority. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying we should just abolish the Catholic Church. I feel like they have too much power over weak people. And people like your aunt are the ones that are doing good and actually making the original message a proper thing in 2018. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I would agree with a lot of that. I think it's, again, for me, I try not to make any generalizations, because you have great cardinals and you got terrible cardinals, and you have, so.
You have Pope Benedict, who was a Nazi youth.
Did you ever see those memes
that
of him
part
with,
wasn't
like
his fault, but the moving priests around who molested people, that was on him. That guy's never leaving the Vatican or he's going to prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just I guess my thing is like, my problem is the established doctrine that I would consider hateful. But that's a bastardization of what it should be, I guess. So even though, like, I believe one thing, I don't really care what you believe as long as you're not hurting anybody. People, like the bad ones, are hurting people. Well, whether it's just spewing hate speech and not actually physically harming someone, that's one thing,
For me, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's interesting because I read some interesting some statistics on Dustin Lance Black, is the guy that wrote Milk, the screenplay. He won the Academy Award for that, and he had an interesting blog post about how the religious mainstream in this country has sort of shifted more in favor of gay rights, and I can't remember if gay marriage had passed when he wrote this, but it was like 60% of Catholics are in favor of equal rights for gays. There's progress being made. People are shifting, but getting out of New York, which is a very liberal place compared to Florida and Texas.
You're talking city or state?
City was what I left. But like in Dutchess County, it's a mixed bag. I think, didn't this county go Trump?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know that for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me.
So it's, we are in a blue state, but I'm pretty sure we are in a red county here, but I do think this zone of New York is kind of a transition zone.
The majority of our local elections do go Republican, but they are incredibly middle-of-the-road Republicans. And there are a few that I even vote for. Our sheriff is Republican. He's a great guy, and he's very middle-of-the-road. The only thing is he's fairly fiscally conservative.
Yeah,
so,
and I think it's like talking about clergy or talking about politicians. You really want to do a case-by-case basis, you know, and really like the more you know about the individual and like what choices they've been making and what sort of party line they're taking, I think the better off you're going to be. But yeah, I just started to talk to people about this, particularly in Texas, and one guy I remember saying he had grown up in. His father's one of the top guys in Joel Osteen's church. And he was like, you know, in those big mega churches, it's all about being loving but not quite approving of it. So, like, there's this party line of everyone's welcome here, but, like, we don't approve of your lifestyle choice, you know. And I've had that said to me in a church in Florida, which is, like, you know, better than some of the really hateful things that are out there. But it's also, like, you know, like someone like me goes, we could do better than this, you know. But particularly in more rural areas, according to him, you know, that's where you, and in some of the more, let's say, hardline denominations, you know, you hear things, this is his soundbite, you'll hear the pastor say, as soon as you suspect that your son has broken his wrist, you better break his ass. And that to me, I was like, okay, if we translate that, that actually means if you suspect that your son is gay, like you need to try to beat the gay out of him, you know, and like saying that from a pulpit, that is kind of like saying God says so, you know. So to me, you know, I go, wait a minute, that really sucks, you know, on a number of levels, because the gay kid that's going to get beat, you know, couldn't do anything about it, even if he tried, you know, like you can't beat the gay out of a kid. It's just, you know, and then also like the kid who wants to take an art class instead of going out for football in Texas, like might also get beat, you know, like that kid's going to get the belt too. It also sucks for the parent who goes, I don't really want to beat my kid, but like this is like divinely, you know, like it's God's rules, you know, so I don't want to take my belt off and, you know, hit my kid for this, you know. And then it also like sucks for the pastor in a way, because if he's going, oh, I'm just following orders, or this is what I've been told is the right way to do it, and like that kid that gets beat takes his life, winds up an addict, you know, winds up with crippling anxiety or depression, that's, you know, if I were that pastor, that'd be on my conscience, you know. So what's interesting now is you're starting to get...
I gotta tell you, though, it's not on his.
Well, that pastor, this hypothetical pastor that we're talking about right now, you know, it's probably not on his conscience. But what's interesting, you know, I met a Harvard Divinity School professor who said a lot of the clergy of different denominations are getting together behind closed doors going, we really got to talk about this, because like the world is changing and like our party lines, they need to change. But they're like off the record closed door meetings going like, maybe time, you know. So I do think like
we need to figure out how to survive.
Well, because the thing is, in the culture that we live in now, that's going to be that could be the thing that takes away religious rights and freedoms. Because the thing is, like, our right to free speech right now is still the same, but if you call someone a fag on Twitter, you're going to get fired. You know what I mean? Depending on where you work and if there's enough outrage. You know what I mean? So culturally, the people that are kind of in charge are limiting those kinds of things. You know what I mean? So it could swing in a way where they start targeting religion. You know, if you look at churches like the Westboro Baptist Church, they to a lot of people, that represents every religious person in the country. You know what I mean? Like to the very, very, very like uber social justice warrior who's just in an echo chamber on Facebook and all they hear is the things they want to hear.
That only read the Huffington Post.
That represents organized religion. And it wouldn't surprise me if they don't separate themselves from people who are legit bigots, and they don't take a more modern stance on these kinds of things. They could be the next target for that. Not only is that a loss of money through a loss of patronage, but you also have you could be attacked on many levels. And you know, I personally, like, for instance, I think that churches, especially these giant mega churches like you mentioned before, they shouldn't be tax havens. They should be paying taxes. These people make millions, you know? And if you have a coordinated attack by liberal Americans, you can take down these organizations, you know?
So can I push back on that a little bit?
Sure. Get them.
What I've learned from my like kind of pilgrimage around the country, if you want to call it that, was one is those Westboro Baptist types, or was it Baptist? Is it Westboro Baptist?
Westboro Baptist Church.
Right,
They're the God hates fags people.
Yeah, right.
Protest.
This is shit I should know, but whatever. They, those are like the extremists that are, you can get really sensational news stories out of. But it's not most religious people in this country, and trying to, for me, that same Harvard professor gave me this language that I really like, which says if you extend your lens of love to everyone involved, and you just go treat all parties with respect. You go, most religious people are just people who are trying to lead moral lives and need someone to tell them how to do it, and they're going, okay, so this is how I was brought up by people I trust to go, the Bible says this, and that's the right way to live, So a person, you kind of inherit a lot of your belief system unless you start to challenge the belief system that you inherited. So a lot of them were told this is the way to live by people that were kind to them or who trusted them, or sometimes people who they were afraid of, but a lot of, if those are the extremists that are great for news stories and great sort of fodder for people who want to be all organized religion is bullshit, a lot of the churches are really loving, supportive environments that do, great work. But you hit the nail on the head with the tax haven thing, and that's one of the subjects I'd like to examine in my work, which is that they're like these huge micro economies, and they if you got 70,000 people going every week to these places, they employ a ton of people. And so that the same guy who told me about the soundbite, his name was Alex. It was one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had. Was saying, in those churches, everyone's trying to be very loving and accepting. So a lot of, they have these. It's like a concert every week, with huge lights and
70,000 people is that's an event.
Yeah.
That's Foo Fighters Wembley Stadium type shit. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the thing is, most of these people are giving a tithing of sometimes 10, 20, 30% of their income.
Because, isn't it?
A tithe tithing is traditionally 10%, but there are a lot of people that give a lot of money to the church, and it's like any, I worked in nonprofit, you have naming opportunities, whatever, so I don't know much about those economies, but according to him, a lot of times it's this kind of nod wink wink thing, because the guys that do the makeup for the gospel singers, that sort of thing, it's understood that their roommate is really their partner. You just can't be open about it, because if you are, you lose your job, and that sucks, and this guy Alex was going, there's a sort of hypocrisy in that. The interesting thing, I met amazing woman in Texas named Susan Cottrell, who runs an organization called Freed Hearts, which is an organization for evangelical parents of LGBTQ kids. She's brilliant. But she told me about, there was one of the huge churches in Tennessee where they shifted the party line from we may not approve of your lifestyle choice, but everyone is welcome here, to a fully affirming stance towards the LGBTQ community, and they lost 2/3 of their congregation. But they were able to rebuild. So it's, you do get these bold leaders that go, you know what, it's time.
$100 million and 2 jets is enough. We can afford to lose 30% of our congregation.
Well, but it's. I think there are the ones that are like that, that are the ones that we love to mock. But there are also ones that have built this huge community. And when someone takes a stance that's that bold, knowing that they're gonna lose 2/3 of their congregation, and the whole the whole thing may kind of go under, but they're willing to take that bold choice. I got to give them credit for that.
Hell yeah, absolutely.
And I'm always going to make the joke, because that's not the guy that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the probably, I don't know how many there are, but there's got to be a couple dozen that are obviously in it for the money. You know what I mean?
I think we focus on them too much, though.
For sure.
And if you want to benefit the most people, you want to focus on that middle of the road where a little bit of effort can do a lot of good for a lot of people. Because the two extreme, comical, sensational things, examples, I think they really to me, it makes it seem hopeless, and there's so many people that are affected by this, so like any LGBT person you talk to is going to have had some experience with this. So
that's it.
I have a lot of hope because I do think things are really shifting very quickly, and I think particularly like kids, like I have a friend in an AA one of the AA meetings that I go to regularly, whose son just changed schools, and I want to say he's in middle school, but she said he came home and the first thing everybody wanted to know about him at his new school was like, how do you identify in terms of your gender and your sexual orientation? Because kids hit in puberty, whatever, but like when I was growing up, it was like you were a boy or a girl, or you were gay or you were straight. And like now I'm like this whole new world of options of like you're gender fluid and you're pansexual, and I just was like, fuck, I have a lot of homework to do if I'm gonna like really understand all of these things. But I do think it's freeing, and I think a lot of those things like feel a lot more honest for us. Every time I say I'm a gay man, it sticks in my throat a little bit because I had very authentic relationships with women. It's been a long time, but like it still doesn't quite feel like 100% true when I say that I'm gay. So like having more freedom to just kind of be who we are, I think is becoming possible for more and more people. But I think particularly people who are sort of sequestered in religious communities or geographically isolated, yes, they have access to the internet, but if you're in a community where it's either physically unsafe or emotionally unsafe or economically unsafe to be who you are, it's hard to get out of that. It's easy to say, okay, you go to New York where everybody's going to love you, but like you have a lot of loving relationships there that you don't want to lose. And a lot of those people, the interesting thing that I found down there is there's this huge, what will people think fear? What will people say? It's like, what will the neighbors say? What will the family say?
They're all going to talk
that's
about
like,
it.
And
people could just
I
let go of that. If people could just say, who the fuck cares, and just like not give a shit.
It's not that easy to do.
I know it's not.
Like if your whole, like if the culture you live in and the community you live in is a like, what will people think community? Like the guy who's like, who the fuck cares? People are like, that person's the pariah down there. So,
and I can't even imagine going through that. But I had a friend in North Carolina who moved from Arkansas, and he was very openly gay, had no problem with it. But he moved to North Carolina, to the Charlotte area, basically, because it was a lot more liberal. He could be who he wanted to be. He started his life over in order to do that, cut ties with all of his friends. He saw his parents twice a year. And I was like, do your parents know? He's like, I'll come out to my mom when my dad dies, because he's going to die before her because he's a drunk and smokes cigarettes and all that. And he's like, I'm not going to come out until I'm in my 50s probably. But around everybody else, you met him, right?
Oh, I
sure
did.
Won't mention his name. He is a flaming homosexual. Yeah.
Yeah, he made
Good for him.
He was
More
not
power to
shy
him.
at all.
It was way over the top. And I think it was way over the top because he was so repressed until he was 21. And then he got the opportunity to move to our area because his brother was going to school where I was going and needed a roommate. So they moved up there. They happened to be my upstairs neighbors. I think he was 20. He was like 23 or 24 when I met him. And his brother was saying he was a totally different person up here. When they'd go to Arkansas, he was like, down home, fucking.
Oh, shucks, Paul.
Yeah. Hillbilly redneck. He would dye his hair back to brown when you go home.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Soy sauce brown or actual brown?
I don't know. Just brown. I don't know.
I
never saw it. But
It's
yeah,
to
get to
my-
the point where you have to cut your parents out of your life because of how much you feel like they're going to disapprove of what you're doing.
Well, and if you look at that, then like if like the ideal is that you want a loving relationship with your family member, like both the parents and the kid are losing out in that respect. And if one thing in their belief system shifted, then the kid could go home for Thanksgiving or, and just like have a healthy relationship. And like, quite frankly, like, I don't know if energetically is the word, but like when you get to be fully authentic with someone and like they know who you are and they accept you for that, like that's a much healthier relationship than someone who's like, I love you, but I don't love that part of you, or when you're like, you can be proud of your schooling or your career or your friend group or whatever, but you have to keep this little part of you sequestered because you're afraid that if that part of you is revealed, then the whole relationship would go out the window, whether that's with a parent or a friend or what have you. It's a shitty feeling, and I had a degree of that when I moved home after college, because most of my guy friends in high school were straight. I can't remember if I did comedy about this
If you keep going, I might be able to pick it up.
My one friend, we used to joke how my one friend won best dressed of our senior graduating class. He's a very handsome guy, and he was. We used to joke that he was gonna be gay, and I was like, I had started to figure out that I was at least mostly gay and was out in college, but then came home, moved back, and was just kind of like, I don't know how people are gonna react to this, and I love these guys, and I don't know how they're gonna feel about this. Spoiler alert, they all turned out to be totally cool, but I was so scared, that in a way, I'd spent 2 years out and went back in when I moved back to Poughkeepsie because I wasn't sure it was gonna be okay here. And so, the joke is that, I asked one of my friends, I did do this at Crafted Cup. I was like, so, Paul, what are you going to do when Derek finally comes out to you? And Paul, thought about it for a moment. He was like, I guess I'd let Derek blow me. And I was like, that's nice of you, Paul. That's very thoughtful. That's that's wow. That's not something. But in a way, I joke that was creating a diversion. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's also me putting feelers out there, not because for fall, but would you extend the same gracious to me, Paul? But it wasn't like that. But just being
just to get an idea of what his reaction would be if you were, right?
Well, one, I just thought it was fun. I was just talking about this with somebody else, with Maggie, I think, from Crafted Cup, that
formerly.
Yeah, I want to jump ship. It's deserted. But I was with my girlfriend still, and I loved her so much, and it was really physically attracted to her. But I organized a group of 9 of us. I think it was her and 4 of her girlfriends, and then 3 of my guy friends. We all went to Montreal for a weekend, I think it was, because McGill University rents out their satellite dorms during the summer because they're empty. So you can. Just kind of almost like an Airbnb before Airbnb existed. So they're not air conditioned, but get this: we put 9 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment with 6 beds or whatever, and it cost $15 Canadian for the weekend, which was $9 American, which means a bunch of broke college kids can't be oh, I don't have the money. So that was my way of getting 9 of us to go. But so go up with this girl, that I'm totally in love with, and my friends and her friends, and we're walking down St. Catherine Street, and unbeknownst to me, the weekend I picked happened to be Gay Pride weekend. And the friend I just told about this was oh, you must have been walking around wow, this could be more comfortable. And so Derek, who we used to joke about being gay, we're walking down St. Catherine Street during Gay Pride, and I was so attracted to her that I either was super repressed or was just I can put that part of me away. I didn't I wasn't I didn't consider myself closeted at that point because it was a very real thing with her. But Derek came up to me and he was he goes, "Yo, Doyle, can I ask you something?" And I was like, "What?" "What's up, Derek?" And he goes, "Did you?" And he's trying to put it politely, but just did you know that it was gonna be Gay Pride weekend when you picked this weekend? And I threw my arm around him. I go, "Actually, Derek, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." And he goes, "Not the time." And it's funny in hindsight because I turned out to be the homo and not Derek, but
so the best dressed.
I didn't realize that I was telling the truth at the time. But yeah, so
real quick, Dutchess County is split almost down the middle with Hillary versus Donald J. Trump, 62,000 to 61,000, give or take, plus or minus.
So we went for Hillary. I wasn't here, but
by
1,000 votes,
less than 1,000 votes. Yeah.
Wow.
7. Yeah, 7. Wait, hold on. No. My math is wrong. 300 and change. It's
a little less than 1,000 or 300.
No, it's 400.
Just stop.
My math is not good today.
Yeah, so another thing, this was very strange to me coming from New York because I was just used to people just being normal. This is fine. Yeah, that guy's gay. Cool. And I was always like that, at least, and the people that I surrounded myself were always like that. And then when my friends at school found out that I was friends with a gay guy who lived in my building, there was a conversation to find out if I was gay. Yeah.
Just from being in proximity?
Just because I knew someone who was gay and I didn't hate him. It was insane. Yeah. It was just they...
So does he touch you in the
Yeah.
middle of the night while you're sleeping?
They couldn't get their heads around it that like I would hang out with a gay guy and he wasn't trying to have sex with me. He kind of was, but I mean,
to be fair, he was trying to have sex with everyone.
yes, yeah, but so yeah, like we're sitting in class and it's just like downtime or whatever, like on a break and I could tell they were trying to like work themselves up to ask me something. I was like, "What the fuck's going on, guys?" And this kid from who the fuck knows where, he had this really thick Southern accent and he just sounded kind of like a dummy. And he just asked me if I was a queer. That was the term that he used. And I was like, why are you asking me this? I have a girlfriend. You've met her. She's smoking. Like, oh, you guys are always asking me about her. And they're just like, well, we found out that this and that, whatever. Like, it turns out Rusty was at a party that somebody was at and the guy was wearing a NASCAR tech shirt. So Rusty talked to him, and then it came up that he knew me, and they knew me. And it was like, oh, Adam must be gay then. That was the logical conclusion.
Breathing in all that gay air. Probably.
And like, friends, like, people would be weirded out, because, like, you know, Rusty would come. Oh, no, I just outed him. Doesn't matter.
No.
He doesn't have a Facebook page. But, you know, I wouldn't see him for a couple weeks. I'd give him a hug. How you doing, man? And people would be like, what the fuck are you hugging that guy for? It was weird. I was like, Rusty's like a girl. Would you hug your girlfriend? You know, a girl that you're friends with? You'd do that, right? Why wouldn't you hug your buddy? It's fine. And people were like, no, that's not cool.
We don't
very
hug.
strange. No, we hugged like twice ever.
Really?
Yeah.
I hug all of my other friends, but
yeah, somebody has to die, or we have to put a music festival on. For us to hug. Yeah, that's it. That's the only time.
Successfully put on a music. Yeah. You wouldn't have got a hug if that thing tanked. I would just went home.
It's like, way to go, asshole! I told you.
Oh shit!
But what year was that?
Which
one?
The
last time we hugged?
No. That's good. Though.
I swear to God, I was just like,
well,
that was last.
It was May.
It was in May.
2018. This was 2006, 2005, something like that. So it's a good 10 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we lived in Race City, USA. It's like the NASCAR town where everyone who works for NASCAR lives. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be elevated. You know what I mean? It's going to be just slightly elevated because you have all these yokels coming from wherever wanting to build race cars. So, not to stereotype them, but that's how they are. They're yokels. And that's fine. They can live their life however they want.
Well, that's like the tech school I went to.
Yeah.
All these guys come from. I went to learn how to, do audio production and mixing and everything like that. And there was a majority of the students came there to quote, and I quote, "When are we getting in the booth?" End quote. I was like, guys, I mean, it's cool and all. You want to, you want to be rappers and all, but this is not. This school is for like the complete opposite of that. Like, we're gonna wear plaid shirts, and we're gonna have cell phone things on our sides. So we're gonna have cell phone holsters, and we're gonna learn about math and technology, wire gauges, and fucking voltage and shit. Well, whatever. But yeah, so I can relate to that a little bit.
Yeah. My favorite moment ever in North Carolina was, y'all got deer in New York? I'm like, yeah, we have a lot of deer in New York. I hit them with my car all the time.
Oh shit. Huh. All right. Well, we're at Jesus Christ. That went quick.
So we got very sidetracked.
Do you feel like you've been sitting here for 50 minutes?
No.
Yeah.
No.
50 minutes. Sidetracked from what?
Got sidetracked from his movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, do you have a title yet?
I like the title God Love the Gays because I think it sounds like some old queen who's like, God love you.
That's good.
And that's, to me, like the website I've been working on, will have an animation where it cycles through God Love the Gays, God Love the Lesbians, God Love the Bisexual, Transgender. It just it goes through every label that I've ever heard of. So it's not limited to gay men. Because I'm actually, if we got video, I started, reading this book. I brought it with me. It's like a comic book.
A comic book? A gay comic book?
Kind of, actually. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's called Queer, Graphic History.
It sounds kind of gay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh wow!
But it is like an illustrated history of queer theory, and like that. It's interesting to me because I like the same way I can for the purposes of my project. I can only speak to what it's like to be, a white cisgendered, mostly gay, half-assed Catholic from the Northeast. I can't speak to what it's like to be a lesbian Muslim or like a Jewish Texan or, so.
This is like
in collecting these stories.
I like that you said a lesbian Muslim and just a Jewish Texan. Like that person's not even gay at all. He's just Jewish and lives in Texas. It's got to be hard for that person. But.
No, but it is funny because like
he's just like, wait, why am I here? We're just interviewing him
in this movie. Do I have to suck a dick? Just like no, no. But it's like you don't realize it is harder to be a Jew in other areas of the country. So okay, so like say like a transgender Jewish Texan. I don't know, but like like I have a friend from one of my good gay friends from New York grew up in Boca Raton, Florida, and he said growing up there he just thought that half of the world population was Jewish. And
half of the world? No, that's Muslim. He's confusing that.
So I don't know. I grew up with I went to a summer camp here, Camp Hillcroft, where I joked that like it wasn't a Jewish camp, but like a lot of the kids I was there with were Jewish, and I just kind of felt that was my friend group, early high school. And, some of them to this day, but I joked that I had to come out to them twice, and the first time was like to tell them that I wasn't Jewish. It's like, so.
I like this is neat. It's like the complete idiot's guide to queer.
Well, and I wouldn't honestly like I joke I'm a pseudo intellectual. I don't actually read the books. I just watch the TED Talks. But like I'm reading this.
I don't read the books. I just look at the pictures.
Yeah, no, but this has been great because having this history of like where this word queer comes from, and this idea of it's like an umbrella term that encompasses people that don't fit squarely into those labels. But the quote that I found in here that I think is very relevant to this kind of work that I'm trying to do is Bell Hooks' quote. And this is in a section on black feminism and how it's related to like queer theory. But it says Bell Hooks' writing also emphasizes openness about differences and the importance of holding a positions of resistance and compassion in activism. So I don't know whether this is a direct quote or not, but because some of the speech bubbles in the book are not verbatim, but she said, understanding marginality as place of resistance, not despair, is crucial for oppressed people. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed?
So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, and that's like, if you want to see, again, one of my favorite friends I love my AA group right now. I have the best group. They're lifesavers, but one of my new good friends in the group is having a hard time with what's going on the American political stage. And just boy. Like I think it's making a lot of people really nuts. And she's just such a badass. She's amazing. And she's big on this like resist movement. But she said she's having to find compassion for the president's supporters. And the thing that she goes, her soundbite that really stuck with me. She goes, "I had to admit that they love their kids too." You know, so if you can find some like common ground, and common like I worked at the Clinton Foundation for an internship for about 6 months, and one of their sound bites that they loved was, if we focus on our common humanity rather than our interesting differences, that'll make the world a better place. So, I had another thought on the, they love their kids too. Went out of my head. Well, it'll come back.
My thing has always been, I kind of go with the flow when it comes to, this is kind of a little sidetrack. The book is interesting to me because I've always been a kind of go with the flow kind of person. Like, if you want to do whatever you want to do, it's fine. I don't care. You be you, and that's fine. But understanding, and like I constantly have my mind blown to smithereens because my sister-in-law is gay, my brother-in-law is gay, I have a sister-in-law who's trans. Like it just there's things that I'm totally 100% fine with, but I'll also get information like my sister-in-law would say about the dating pool in an area. Like, for instance, Hudson Valley, let's say. I've also heard this from you. I've heard this from Tanner as well. It's just like, for me, if I were dating, it's fine. Like there's plenty of straight people around, but the gay community is it turns almost, God, what's the term I'm looking for? Like everybody kind of knows everybody.
Yeah.
And it's that kind
of in the biblical sense often.
Yeah, that kind of freaked me out. I was like, holy fuck, I never thought about that would be an issue. And the whole trans thing. I don't claim to understand what's going on in someone's head who's going through that. However, when I, did some research and I watched some informative stuff, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes a whole lot more sense to me. What I'm trying to say is that it's the educational part, the having compassion for a person who doesn't know. Like, I don't know. I might be cool with it, but I still don't know, and I'll come off as ignorant. However, if I'm speaking to someone, to not get my head bitten off and just be like, well, no, that's not how it is. It's actually like this because X, Y, Z. Oh, okay, sorry. Fine. But I constantly get nervous. I work myself up, and I'm like, how do I act? Do I I gotta check myself? You get afraid of insulting someone that you care about, but in all reality, I just don't know, and I'm curious, and I don't want. But so it's a balancing act. In that, and that's why that quote kind of spoke to me too.
Well,
because at the same time, on the other side of the spectrum, that's what I find a lot with politics and everything like that. Like, people are yelling and screaming on this side about something, when if you flip the tables on another subject, or if you pick a different subject, the tables are flipped. That's what I was trying to get at. So, I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point.
No, but I get what you're coming at, and that's part of why I'm reading this book, because I identify as like part of the queer community. Garbage was always my favorite band growing up, and they had that song "Queer." It was the queerest of the queer, and it's written about I only found this out recently. The song is actually written about a guy who takes his son to a brothel to have his first sexual experience, and that was the inspiration for the song. I think Butch Vig read the book, or maybe it was Duke, I don't know, but the LGBTQ community just like embraced this as this is our anthem, and it wasn't like nothing against Kylie Minogue, but for some of us, like, we want like guitars, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I'm gonna catch hell from so many fucking people. There's gonna be some like really rabid Kylie fans that are gonna fucking stone me to death, and I'm gonna just like,
oh boy, I love
my
it.
inner Shirley Manson just to survive.
I have no idea how to spell her name. I'm just gonna make it up.
G-U-E.
This is my best quotes from today. Nothing against Kylie. No, I just heard Justin Vivian Bond is another one of my like creative idols, talking about how amazing Kylie is. And he told this story. I went to see Justin perform at Cho's Pub. It was something about like she was going on tour, and someone asked her like, "Where are you going on tour?" And she was like, "The world." And Justin thought that was like the best shade ever thrown, and I just I it was like, yeah. But what was I gonna do? Oh, so like I was really resistant to the idea of being gay. It was my worst case scenario. And there was a time where I was like, it felt like a losing battle. There was a time where I didn't want to live. I didn't realize that they were related. And coming to terms from that was like, it is an ongoing process until this day. So trying to get up to speed now with this like rapidly changing world is a lot of investment of time, because like I don't understand what it's like to be a trans person. I'm like very comfortable in a male body, so like I can't relate to that, but it doesn't mean I don't, I don't know if obligation's the word, but like I'm glad to hear that you're curious about what the experience is like to be something that you can't relate to. Check your Pornhub history after these brief messages, ladies and gentlemen. But
I would love to see that, but I don't think that you're gonna. Are you smart enough to go on private mode?
Oh yeah, I'm a sharp fella. I'm 35 years old. I've made my mistakes, and I've learned from them.
But the point I was gonna make is
never download ever.
Yeah,
anyway.
We've all been there.
I don't understand why the computer's not working.
Right, but like the point I was gonna make is. I'd rather learn from people than like read it in a book. Like I'm reading this book because it feels like a comic book and it's like a survey course, that I'm going to be able to read, in very little time, frankly, in the handicapped bathroom at work on my breaks, well, because I can lock that door and like, but, I'm a white guy, watching movies like 13th, Ava DuVernay's documentary was like incredible for me because I was like, I have no firsthand experience of what it's like to be black in this country, but it doesn't mean I don't have an obligation to do my homework and try to figure out, try to learn as much as I can and then figure out like what that means in terms of what I need to do to be the best person I can be, as a member of this society, so, that's why I don't know, I'm sort of stepping into this documentarian role, which I have no training, because I like just having when you can put away all of your like current beliefs and go, now tell me why you believe the thing that you believe, and like that's interesting, and like just like go into those conversations like absolutely certain that you're never going to go, that's wrong, or take the counter argument. One of the best conversations I ever had also in Texas was with this a young woman named Lauren who was in a mattress store that I went in to buy. It was like a eco-friendly mattress store and like way out of my price range. Like I didn't realize, but I was talking to her. I hope this story isn't too long. I know time's flying, but as just getting her card and like the options that I had looked at in case I started making money or whatever. But she was like, I'm going home to work on my ethics paper because she was doing a clinical psych master's degree. I think, she was going to be a counselor. And I was like, oh, what are you doing your ethics paper on? And she said, well, the concept I picked is, what if I have a client who comes to me and he's a gay man and he's requesting conversion therapy? And I was like, huh, and I was like, well, instead of freaking out about conversion therapy, I was like, well, what's your thesis? Like, what are you doing with this paper? And she was like, well, we know the science doesn't really support it, but if he's unhappy as a gay man and wants to try to convert, am I obligated as, and so, it seemed that she was taking like this isn't, sticking more with the science. But we started to talk about like her views on homosexuality. And I was like, how do you feel about that? And the first thing out of her mouth was, well, I know what the Bible says about that. But, and it was like and that's most people in the Northeast, that's our reaction is, ay, ay, ay.
It's like yes, we all fucking know. I don't need to hear
a lot
you
of
say
us don't, and I don't, and I'm a homo, and I grew up half-assed Catholic, and I didn't know exactly what the Bible said about it, and it was interesting, and I was like, well, what does the Bible say about that? And she goes, well, it's Leviticus, which granted is the same chapter that says you're not allowed to eat shellfish, and I was like, wait, really? Because like lots of gays know this, especially if they've been beaten over the head with Bibles, literally or metaphorically, in their upbringing. I didn't know this because I didn't have that kind of family, So, and she was like, yeah, it's Leviticus says, you can't eat shellfish, and like man shall not lie with man. I think that's the one. But and I was like, so wait a minute, why does the homosexuality get so much more attention than the shellfish thing? Like this is like, it's the same rules, no muscles, like what is this, and she was like, yeah, and then we got into a discussion of like, what is scripture, and scripture is the word of God breathed through man. And so instead of going like taking any adversarial stance with her, it was just like, just enlighten me of like why you believe the things that you believe, because it was fascinating to me that she chose that topic, because it meant, oh, she's like, she knows what the Bible says about that, but her conscience is starting to chime in, and those are the people that I want to reach, or that like, and I gotta track her down because it was one of the most enlightening conversations of my life. But she was like, oh, scripture, is the breath of God come through man, and I was like, well, who gets to decide what's scripture?
Yeah,
and she was like, there was this thing called the Council of Nicaea in 15 such and such, where basically probably, a bunch of old straight white men sat around and got to decide, like, this stuff is legit and this stuff is not as far as scripture. And I was like, okay. And I was like, so conceivably, if, you have the scribe in the first place, but then also this council, you have two places where we could have had some human error in there. And she goes, yeah, I guess you could say that.
And then God said, purple monkey dishwasher.
What is that from?
That's from The Simpsons. It's like when you play telephone.
Biblical telephone.
Like, Skinner said we won't make it. Purple monkey dishwasher. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she explained, because I had gone with my fourth sponsor in Florida to what he told me was going to be a motivational speaker, but turned out to be this guy who is he's an evangelist, but he was born without arms or legs, which was odd, but Jesus saved him, and he's, now goes surfing and stuff like that, but goes around the world saving souls. And I was like, help me to understand this concept of getting saved, because I went with this sponsor who
technically,
like, the idea of getting saved is fascinating, because the idea is, like, according to this woman Lauren in the mattress store, if you believe in Jesus, I know, she being the be all end all.
The
prophet
as far as Lauren in the mattress store.
No, but isn't that great though? Like, it's just like
Lauren of Raymore and Flanagan.
That is funny now that you mention it. But like, you got to get out and talk to everyday people, not just celebrities and people who are in leadership positions, to be like, how did, like, the everyday. Anyway, so I was like, help me understand this whole, and she was like, basically, if you believe in Jesus, then you automatically get into heaven, but you're saved, and that's what being saved is. And I was like, well, what if, I was like, if you don't, can you still go to heaven? And she's like, yes, it's possible to earn your way into heaven through good works.
Nice.
I was like, but so, like, believing in Jesus kind of like taking life pass fail? And she was like, yeah, kind of, in a way, so it's this kind of like, just going, okay, these are such foreign concepts to me, because we don't have this whole you're saved or you're not saved in Catholicism, but like, just going, tell me more. And like, no disagreement, no, that's crazy, no, nothing, but like, just, because, and it just hit me, like, she believes all of these things because someone she trusted taught her that that's the way to live, and you have to respect that. She's doing the best she knows how, so like, the fact that but she's also like finding the courage to go, I'm not sure if I agree with all of this, I think is really hard in communities where that's not what people do. Conforming to the party line is how you show that you're an upstanding member of that community. So the ones that are like willing to go, this part
Whereas
doesn't
here,
quite sit right.
Around here, going, is encouraged.
Because we have a fiercely individual. Oh, that was the interesting point, which did come back to me. The woman, Susan Cottrell, who does the work with evangelical parents, I may have her book too. She was saying, what she told me, that the evangelicals in this country feel like their way of life is under attack. So what you said earlier about liberals, if you really like we could take these guys down, they already feel like they're under siege, and that's why they are less. They're kind of impenetrable to liberal messages of this could be better, because like, we've already made them the enemy, which is why they have no interest in listening to us, because they feel like their way of life.
That's a great point.
So
I also
empathize with them and find compassion with. They're often rural communities where like the way of life that they find comforting is a way of life that we like scoff at, or we act like they're dumb and ignorant and backwards, and all of the things that they are who they are. If you can't find compassion for that, you're not going to change those minds or hearts.
And like, as a caveat to that, like, previous statement, I think that you can be a social justice warrior, liberal zealot too. You can be just as bad as the Westboro Baptist Church as being like this crazy lefty who thinks that we should be banning speech and doing like legislating how people think. So I completely think that side of the spectrum too can become, radicalized.
Oh, sure.
And I think that it does. And I think that it is happening already, and I think that it's a problem.
It's probably worse now than it ever has.
Oh, for
been
sure.
When it comes to the,
but what
radical
I'm saying is, once those people have no one else left to attack, they're going to start going down the line of the less extreme of things. So, like, right now, it's all about Nazis and what is it? The alt-right.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's all about. Like, let's say they take all of those guys down and they're all gone. It's possible that they're going to need to pick another target.
Yeah, they're going to have to move on to,
you know, and I think that places like the Westboro Baptist Church is a form of religious extremism. It is. It doesn't represent Catholics or Christians in reality, but it's an easy target, like you were saying before. And that could bleed into people that are normal religious people. And that's they got to be worried about that. And like you were saying, the evangelicals feel like they're being attacked because they kind of are.
Yeah. As like a pretty lefty liberal, you know, I don't think we're looking for our next target, you know, but I do think like the way a lot of the disproportionate amount of attention that goes to the real extreme groups, you know, makes it seem like it's this us versus them thing.
Yeah,
and
it's
I think,
one or
like,
the other.
You
There's
know, the
no
more
gray
they
area.
divide and conquer us, whether it's along religious lines, along sexuality lines, or along race lines, you know, the more it's us and them, you know, the less people are coming together to try to figure out, like, how are we going to get through life together, you know? And maybe like gross oversimplification, but like I think the less we take an adversarial stand, and the more we're willing to go, like, just tell me why, like, and ask first, rather than go, I believe this, and like you may or may not be able to convince me otherwise. And like also encountering some people that had less than enlightened views on, you know, homosexuality or race issues or what have you, you know, in Florida and Texas. To me, it was interesting to. It was very tempting to go, you're a fucking moron, and like you're a bigot and a racist, and you know, and like that. You know, I quit a job in Florida. Did I tell you this? Did I do this
I don't
comedy
think so.
bit? So it's like I
do it
don't
a
know whether
bit.
I should be. No, it's not even a bit, but like. Well, so I got a job at a gay strip club in Fort Lauderdale. I did do this bit with the but like I don't know, you were there, yeah. But anyway, I got
it's all a blur, man.
it was like
he was
about
drunk.
2 years sober, and it was just, you know, got a job as a cocktail waiter in a gay strip club, being like, this will make a good story. I'll make a little money, you know. This will just be like, you know, a funny way to, like, you know, I'm not going out to gay clubs. I'm at work. You know, this is fine. Like, whatever. I'm just running Cosmos back and forth in front of a bunch of big muscly dudes wagging their junk to an Amy Grant remix, and like this is like whatever. It's fine. But I quit that job because the GM there, who I'm not going to name, was counting money at the bar one night, and I didn't like him to start with because he thought I was shirking, and I thought he was a dick, and I didn't like the way he talked to people. But he's like, yeah, that one customer was giving me a lot of shit, acting like I was racist or whatever. And he what did he say? He goes, I think he's still mad about slavery or something. I'm sorry, but if it wasn't for slavery, those guys would still be chasing lions in Africa. And I was like,
yep, that's racist.
I just was like, holy shit. And just like, and you know, but like, you wouldn't hear that in Poughkeepsie.
Fuck no. You might.
Would you?
You
I
would.
don't know.
You wouldn't
Yep.
in public.
Would you?
You wouldn't in public.
You would.
Like,
because
like I went to like a fancy Northeast liberal
So-
arts school where
Yeah,
like
that
no
shit.
one would ever say, like, you'd get stoned to death for saying
Yeah.
something like that in my like communities.
Yeah.
But like that was like this. If that's one shitty example of like, I heard a lot of shit like that in Florida and Texas that I didn't hear in the company that I keep, at least in New York. There may be people down the street right now are saying the same thing.
They are. And
For sure.
Like,
I
that's
worked
frightening. You know,
I worked
to me, that's like,
in many dealerships, and the funniest thing is, like, as I moved up, like, I started off at Honda and then moved all the way up to Mercedes. So I was like in the big leagues, making a ton of money. It got steadily more racist the more money the mechanics were making. And being a straight white guy with a beard, everyone assumes, especially because I have guns and stuff like that, and, you know, I'm into like manly things. Everyone just assumes that I am just a white racist when there's no one else around. I am so fucking happy that I was not working as a mechanic during the whole Trump Hillary Clinton thing.
Oh my god!
Because I would have had to finally gone like, you know what? I'm a liberal. I consider myself socialist. You can stop talking to me now, and that would have been fine. But like I worked with people who like used Porch Monkey regularly, about people in Poughkeepsie.
What's wrong
driving
with
down
that?
the arterial. We're taking it back, right? That's from Clerks too.
Yeah.
What
What a weird reference.
But yeah, that was a term that was used by one guy at Mercedes almost every day, constantly.
Yeah.
And just bitching about fucking entitlement programs and welfare moms. I'm like, yeah, she's living high on the hog, $240 a month after taxes. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing real well with her 3 kids at $240 a month, you dumb fuck.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then I would school them on the shit that they didn't understand, and they would just shut down and then start talking about some other bullshit. Just it would always revert to like a racist thing because they didn't have the facts.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite was when I was there, Obama was in office and
ruining everything.
Yeah, ruining everything, giving me free fucking health care after I got laid off from my job. But they're just like, yeah, I was at the fucking tax person the other day and they were saying that's the number I'm gonna have to pay because of Obamacare. And I'm like, no, that's not true. It's like, yeah, that's what she said. She's like, next year you're going to have to pay that. I was like, that's not true. That's incorrect. And he's like, yeah, it was like $3,500. I was like, yeah, that's the number based on your income if you didn't have health insurance. Do you have health insurance? Yeah. Then you don't have to pay that number.
Yeah.
That is punishing you for making $90,000 a year and being a leech on the public for when you fucking fall and break your collarbone and you go to the hospital and don't pay your fucking medical bills. That's what that's there for. You make enough money to buy insurance, you buy insurance, you don't have to pay that. No, that's not what she said. I was like, you misunderstood. The tax expert that you went to at H&R Block, they didn't fucking tell you that. That's not correct. But this is the shit that I would get all the time. And it's just, it's everywhere. But because you're a gay man and because you don't work in blue-collar jobs, you don't see it.
Okay. Yeah, well, and that, you know, like, I am acutely aware that, like, in a way, like, you go to a fancy Northeast liberal arts school, you think you're getting educated and you're smarter, you know, than a big chunk of the population. But it also makes you kind of naive, you know, because you're not, and, like, that's why Texas was great. Like, I was an Uber driver my entire time in Austin, you know, and, that, like, it just, so just being willing to talk to whoever or just like overhearing like taxi cab confession style, just like what goes on in your backseat was like really, really eye-opening for me in a way that I think it's comfortable for a lot of us to go like we're the smart ones and we know better and what the fuck is wrong with the rest of the country.
Well, they're thinking the same thing.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Well,
they're thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah. And so that like, you know, again, this kind of like having compassion for whoever you're talking to and going like they struggle too, they've been through some shit, you know. And I like another like that strip club, like quitting that job, you know, over that statement, you know, is like it still gets me riled to this day. But a funnier example of like, okay, just help me understand how you think. I had this passenger in Austin. I drove her back from the airport, but she was talking about how she'd like been doing hypnotism to quit smoking. You know, was like terrified that her family would find out because it was so new agey. And
They've only been doing that for 40 years.
No, but she was
black magic.
But like if you
the
stop
work of
and
the
think
devil.
about it for a second, like as somebody who's had like some really, really crazy serious mental health stuff, particularly depression, anxiety, addiction, and suicide. I've had all 4 of those at various points in my life. When somebody is like, when I can sense their anxiety when they're even talking about something, like I can empathize with that. And like she was really scared that like her family might find out or her job might find out because she works for a Christian company, you know. And I was just like, her job might hinge on people not finding out that she decided for hypnotism instead of Jesus to get sober, to get, you know, off cigarettes. But the comical example that I got from her was because I'm all about the new agey stuff, you know. You see I have a, you know, lapis in my hand right now because it's supposed to facilitate communication. Yeah, we'll come back. But, you know, I spend half of what I earned at Crafted Cup next door at the Dreaming Goddess. You know, it's just like new agey does not have a negative connotation in my world. But, like, she was telling me, I may have told you guys this story before, but they have a wellness day, like periodically, say once a quarter at her Christian company. And some woman, for one of her colleagues, proposed doing yoga, you know, like a yoga, like I don't know whether all day or what have you. And one of the other women who worked there was like, no, yoga is of the devil. And
how you figure?
Just because it's Eastern practice.
Well, you know, and that was like, but the woman who was like, yoga's of the devil won that battle. And they did something else for their wellness day. And I was like, whoa, what? You know, because that to me, like yoga is like, you know, like so mainstream right now that it's glorified stretching in a lot of places. You know, it's not like, you know, we're not working on getting metas and like magic powers and stuff. It's really, you know, at the level they do it, it's like, you know,
lot of the people that I know that do yoga, they don't even buy into 90% of that stuff, you know, and like you still get like the weirdos who are like you.
Thank you.
Yeah, talking about chi and things like that. Yeah. But, you know, we got the same shit in karate.
Yeah.
You know, it's really no difference.
Harness your chi.
Yeah.
But I was going, my joke was like, I was like, does she do this with like everything? Every time she doesn't get her way? Like if you're having like a company breakfast and somebody's like, we're having waffles, and she was like, no, waffles are of the devil. And you're like, all right, fuck it, we'll have pancakes. You know, pancakes are fine. Yeah. You know, like just like, is that how you win these arguments in Christian companies?
Yeah,
like
that's
I
the
don't
kind
know,
of person
like,
who won't use real maple syrup. Yeah, it's got to be Aunt Jemima.
Maybe not Aunt Jemima.
Oh yeah,
it's probably Log Cabin.
Yeah, it's Log Cabin, not Aunt Jemima.
I need to take a break.
Yeah, everyone
I'm gonna
needs
wet
to
myself. I want to come back and talk about your conversation, Rock. And
I got a handful. So
yeah. Well, I definitely want to. I'm definitely curious about that shit. But I already played the NPR thing in the beginning of the episode.
Did you?
Yeah, I wanted to change it up a bit.
Here?
You were not. You were weeing. But,
do you want to do plugs now or at the end?
Let's just do them now, real quick, before we go.
Right. So Crafted Cup, you all know that. You got it memorized by now.
Right.
But let's talk about 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to be live streaming, hopefully, if their internet holds up, from the Dark Side Records, that place.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No, I was just looking, and I was like, it's not even listed here.
I have it here. Knitting is Metal, the Stitchin' Bitch with Dead Radio Podcast. It's Monday, August 6th. It says 6 to 9. We'll try and go for that. 611 Dutchess Turnpike in Poughkeepsie, New York. Tony Odell, she's been on the show a few times. Knitting is Metal on Instagram, Facebook. It's basically a class to learn the basics of knitting, because knitting is a fucking thing now. So
now, not for thousands of years.
It is, but it's not just your grandmother or your parents sitting on the couch watching Matlock and knitting. It's like Tony sits and listens to Saint Anger like on repeat because she loves the album so much and
so
knits.
Good.
She loves Metallica's Saint Anger album. She thinks
Knitting
it's
is
the
Metal
greatest.
thing. When I went to Dark Side, 2 weeks ago, that was like I was looking at their listings of events, and I was like, I would go to that.
Yeah,
so come, we're gonna be there.
Knit.
Yeah,
it's cool.
So you can go to the Knitting is Metal page, go to the event, and there's a link where you can sign up for it. You don't necessarily have to sign up for it beforehand, but for $10 you get everything you need to knit for the night.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that.
Yeah. So definitely sign up. We're gonna be there. We're gonna be live streaming from, I think it's from 6 to 9.
Yeah, 6 to 9. And we're gonna I'm gonna attempt a dick hat. I want a hat with a dick coming out of the front of it, like a unicorn.
Where there's
except
a will,
penis.
there's a way.
Yeah.
I have faith in you.
And what did you say?
I'm either gonna make a gun holster or a beer koozie, whichever is easier.
Which is right down your alley. But yeah, it's gonna be.
I listed my favorite color as olive drab.
Oh, I didn't sign.
I signed you up already.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. You told me about it. Yeah. So she also does custom yarns and everything like that. She's got a really cool thing going on, and that's the big thing right now. August 6th, Knitting is Metal. Check it out on Facebook.
Try it out.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to do this I'm going to shuffle some music here. Oh. Logan fucking Callahan again. Sorry, everyone. We'll be right back.
Searching for symbols, letters. control, leaving my soul. Set me
Hey, this is Diego.
This is Taka.
This is Rick.
This is Mike from Hudson Valley Tattoo Company, and you're listening to Dead Radio Podcast.
Only took 25 minutes.
No, it took him 25 minutes.
Your computer sucks.
Remix. It was fine before.
I understand that, but it's just a trend. Congratulations to Diego on his nuptials.
That's why I played that. Yes.
I
Congrats
have
to Diego.
I have not met his wife, but I'm sure she's very nice.
I have.
Yeah.
She is very nice.
I was hoping she was like, she's a fucking bitch.
I don't know. I don't know them well enough to start to talk too much shit. But yeah, man. If you guys are looking for anybody out there looking for a decent tattoo, Hudson Valley Tattoo Company for sure.
Place to be.
Yeah. Anyway, we are back. Mike Doyle's here. We got fucking pretty goddamn deep on that first segment. Jesus Christ.
I did not know that those two work so well together.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
It's the dong gong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That is innovative.
So yeah, we're back. And the thing that's been, freaking me out the entire time. Not freaking me out, but I kind of understood what it was. But I need to know more about it. Was your little blue rock.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, when I saw you tossing it back and forth between your hands while you're talking, I was just like, that's got something to do with energy and all that nonsense. That, mystic shit.
New agey stuff.
The new agey stuff.
Yoga, waffles.
That the girls that the girls next door put up with, and the owner next door actually is into.
I just think of, did you ever have one of those rock tumbler kits when you were a kid?
Fuck. What do you mean rock tumbler kits?
It was like the thing that you put rocks in. That, it would
Yeah,
tumble
yeah,
and
yeah,
smooth
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's all I think about when I see those things.
Yeah.
So
that it just reminds me of my youth and making a gigantic mess. Because
yeah, please. Yeah.
So I got got this nice little blue guy,
That's
very
lapis
deep
lazuli
cobalt blue, or
little gold flecks in there.
and then turquoise. I'm a big fan of turquoise. It's very smooth rock. And here's the brown. This was this rose quartz and shit. Looks like rose.
Wood.
Oh, it's petrified wood. Okay. I'm right there. Oh wait, you know what? Now that I look at it, it does look like wood. That's actually kind of cool. To be perfectly honest. What the fuck? You're just carrying around rocks. It's just work. This one's neat. It's like iridescent.
I don't want to see anymore.
I don't want.
Tiny ones in here.
Oh god! The entire glass.
Where is my volume?
Sucks too.
The hippie hipster over here.
All right, so explain the rocks to me.
Okay, so
Well, do it when you do it into the mic.
that would probably be wise. So
While I
the
clean
idea
up my
with these, I use them as glorified worry stones, but the idea is the same way. Like everything has a vibration, or
frequency
has its own energy, its own frequency. And so the same way certain herbs have medicinal properties, whether it's the chemistry or what have you. Some of these will sort of vibrationally affect people in different ways. So petrified wood is supposed to be grounding. So if your head's up in the clouds, it'll help you get your feet back on the ground and get you back in the here and now. Lapis is supposed to be good for communication and throat chakra stuff, So that was why I brought those two. This one is I forget why. I think it's Amazonite, but it's supposed to calm your nerves. And then this one I just happen to have with me. I put a bunch of them in my bag, for various reasons, depending on where I'm going, and then forget to take them out. This is Labradorite, which is about transformation, I think, or it's the magician. I'd have to look it up, but it's
that's a cool one because it changes colors and shit.
Yeah. So
as in,
I meditate with them, and then also setting an intention of I'm going to communicate clearly, or I'm going to keep my feet on the ground and not mentally wander off too far, or I'm not going to get anxious. Sometimes having something that's almost like a talisman, to just kind of solidify that it's like a focal point for the intention that you're setting, so whether you believe in the stuff or not, just being like, all right, this is gonna, calm me down. It's, seems to work. So
as like an engineer, a semi-professional engineer, I can get on. That's
Emphasis
the one
on semi.
Yeah, that's the one thing I can't quite call bullshit on, the energy thing and frequencies and everybody like vibrating and stuff. That I kind of, it makes sense to me just because of what I've learned when it comes to bending sound waves and everything like that.
Well, there's some measurable science to that. Yeah,
but it just, I don't know. I have a hard time latching on to that stuff. The oils thing, for instance, and for some people, this essential oils craze is really helpful to them. But I've been in groups where people are explaining the oils and they're talking about, oh, this is good for that. I'm like, all right, great. Can you explain to me the science behind what you're saying? And I'm met with I'll get you some information about that, and then never have gotten any information.
Yeah, it's always never based on a study. It's very what's the word where it's based on a small sample group. It'll come to me
anyway.
But talking about the essential, I mean, there's definitely oils that are beneficial. That's scientifically proven that they are. As far as, I'm glad that I didn't interject with "this is bullshit" and listen to what you had to say about it, because I was taking from what you said before. And it's a focal point. It's tying a string around your finger doesn't help you remember things. It reminds you about the thing you're trying to remember.
Right.
So if you go, this is going to help me with this, it will, whether or not you believe in it. Right. Because it's reminding you to concentrate on the thing that you're set out to do. So I get that.
Yeah,
it's cool. And it's not really for me, but the way you explain it makes perfect sense.
Well, and other fun facts about that, I'm glad you brought up oils, because I had friends in Austin that were really into doTERRA and Young Living, I think is the other big one.
Yeah, Young Living.
They just I'm not drawn to it. I don't feel pulled to it the way. Since I was a kid, I had a geode collection, a rock collection. It was just fascinated by these things, and just still have a lot of those stones. And I walk into Dreaming Goddess next door and just feel soothed and just fascinated, whereas there's other ritual magic doesn't grab me as much as some people just want to start a coven and do that. But I read a book on psychic self-defense, by Dion Fortune, who is
it sounds like if they put vampires at the end of that, it would be just as legitimate.
That's all I thought about was one of the tenets of the Church of
self-defense of vampires.
Yeah. Well, there was actually a section in there on vampires.
There
so,
sure is. Psychic vampires.
Well, and if you go and that's what's funny is reading a lot of this spiritual literature, this super practical, this is about different levels of consciousness. This is the third David Hawkins book that I'm reading. The first one I read was called Letting Go, and that one definitely changed my life. Taught me a lot more about emotions and how to kind of release different energies. But psychic self-defense, only somewhat practical and really, really, really entertaining. So it's almost instead of reading a horror fiction novel, it's let's read this thing written by this woman in 1920 about how to protect yourself psychically. And I, as a novice,
there's a chapter on bloodletting.
Chapter on bloodletting. I'm trying to think what was fun. The interesting takeaways.
Well, the 1920s was a very weird time. Spiritualism was really, really, really big. If anybody wants to check out an awesome, you hate it, but Lore has a really good episode on spiritualism. And a lot of the hoaxes that were going on back then. And there were two sisters that had this weird way that they could crack their ankles, that it would sound like someone was tapping on the walls. And they did this shit for 30 years. And then it finally came out that it was a total hoax.
Yeah. To be clear, I don't hate Lore. I just hate
the way
the narrator, and I can't get past it. It takes me out of the fucking show.
He has
I
a
wish
very.
I heard of it.
We can't play it, but because I think they have a YouTube channel. But if anybody's interested, they have a pretty cool show on Amazon Prime and a very good podcast that I've to be honest, have kind of gotten bored with. But the first, I've listened to every episode until the past 20. and then I kind of just I'll come back to it, I'm sure, but yeah, it's an acquired taste, his voice.
Yeah.
I'm funny with religion. I'm funny with this kind of stuff. And what would you call this? Like this spirituality? This
it's kind of like a spiritualism thing, I guess, but it's like the way that you seem to approach it isn't. You don't feel like they're magic, right?
I mean, magic is, I think, a fascinating concept because it was actually before I got sober, and somebody was like, you seem, you're so into this idea of things being magical. And he was like, what did he say? He was like, it has to be somewhat surprising. It seems to be an element of like, oh, it's like surprise and delight. But like, to me, magic is not interesting unless it has some sort of agency, you know? And like, quite frankly, the reason I sought a lot of this shit out was because I was up a creek without a paddle. And I was like, I don't know how to get out of this mess. I don't know how to get sober. I don't know how to get healthy. My life is a living hell. And like, I was kind of grasping at straws, but also like had made a lot of logical decisions that hadn't worked out well for me. So at some point I decided to get out of my head, drop down here and like follow intuition and just go, let me see what I'm pulled towards. You know, and just follow curiosity, really. And so some of the spiritual schools of thought that I subscribe to would say that if you follow your curiosity, you know, not only will that bring you joy, but also the things that you wind up being curious about. A lot of times you're trying to bring in skill sets that you had in other lifetimes, you know, so whether you might have been able to manipulate energies with sound, and that's why you're drawn to sound engineering, whereas for me, I may have had some expertise with crystal healing in another lifetime, and that could be why I'm drawn to that, whereas, like, you know, if oils speak to you, maybe you were a chemist, you know, back before it was called chemistry, and we were calling it alchemy, so, like, kind of reawakening those skill sets, you know, I'm not drawn to everything that's in Dreaming Goddess, but I have my favorites, and then I have some things that I'm kind of averse to, but also I love this shit because I like have every career aptitude test I ever took came up clergy, oddly, which I always thought, yeah, which I always thought was
career aptitude.
Don't
test.
do it now. They're like
fast,
a lot of questions.
Like,
are they?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not like a Facebook thing.
No, it's like a rigorous thing, but yeah, I came up clergy as like a far and away number one, and then number two for me was always like a non-invasive medicine or healing, and I was always like a chiropractor or whatever is like the closest thing. But like now I'm going, oh, this is like clergy kind of makes sense because you have this community organizer, you have this person who says like,
you should
this
just
is
start a cult.
Yeah,
perfect.
Piece of
I'm
cake.
already in AA,
buy
so
a batch. Yeah. At least you acknowledge that a little bit.
I always say that AA is the most boring cult I've ever joined, but it's also the only one that's ever been useful. But
it's pretty effective.
But with this stuff, like, I was like, do I buy it? Do I not? You know, I'm curious. And I just kind of like the idea of setting the intention. But it wasn't until I bought this stone called Moldavite or Moldavite. I'm not even sure how it's pronounced, but it's
probably
Moldavite. Yeah, probably. It's an impact glass, so it was created where a meteorite, I'm not sure, hit the Earth.
It's both. It's a meteor until it hits the Earth. It's a meteorite. Okay. Once it enters the atmosphere, it's a meteorite.
Okay,
yeah.
There you go. So I was right both times then.
Yeah.
But so I was trying to get my third eye open because I went to a psychic once who was like, your third eye's closed. You know, I have a lifetime of these stories because it's what I do for novelty, frankly, but it's the novelty plus curiosity of there might be something to this or there might not. And like learning discernment of like, this is legitimate or this is bullshit or it's useful to me or it's not. It is actually useful because I've found a number of things that are really useful. But in trying to get my third eye open, you know, there's part of me that still wants to be an X-Man when I grow up and have psychic powers, you know. I started working with this stuff, Moldavite, and I laid in bed with it, I think in my hand, or maybe like just on here, and listened to one of these. Have you ever seen these Hertz frequencies that they have on YouTube?
Yeah.
Where there's some are supposed to be healing, some
yeah.
I listened to
some
a
are
third
supposed
eye
to give you
opening
orgasms. Like there's all kinds.
I haven't
of shit
tried that one.
Yeah.
That was
there's a bunch of them.
It's a nice alternative to Pornhub, I guess. But but
what the hell's the name of
that? I laid there listening to the pineal gland one, and
the DMT thing, yeah.
So it was this third eye opening Hertz frequency. Don't ask me the number, along with this thing like on my third eye. And I fell after an hour, fell asleep and woke up so wired and my nerves were so shot. It was like being electrified, and had to call a friend who was like very well versed in these things, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that's like that'll take you into outer space. Like that's a really wacky stone that you're working with. That's like powerful, but like not subtle by any means." The girl that I bought it from at the stone crystal store in Austin, I'd been hearing about it, and I was like, maybe I should try this stuff out. It's not cheap. But I was like, do you guys have any of this? And she was like, yeah, we keep it in a box, in another box underneath the counter so it doesn't blow up the store. And I was like, the fuck? Seriously? You know, and she was like, yeah, no, it's a very impatient stone, and it's just like, it's really volatile, and like we'll push changes through, like whether it's comfortable or not. And she goes, I was told that I would never bear children, you know, and within 9 months of buying a piece of moldavite, which she still had around her neck on a pendant.
But how come that one didn't blow up the store?
No.
It was
I
too
mean,
small.
That's a joke. It's not actually going to blow up the store, but it's like it's
what kind of box was it in?
It was a Faraday cage.
No, yeah, right. She goes, I was told I would never.
We
bear
keep it
children.
next to the snake oil.
It was in an old Popeye's chicken box.
That would be funny. Yeah. But she goes, I was told I would never bear children, and then within 9 months I was pregnant, and I looked at her and I was like, if I get knocked up, I'm gonna freak the fuck out.
But to be fair, if she was told she would never bear children and she believed it, she stopped using birth control. That's what I'm thinking happened. No?
You lost
no,
me
I don't.
Well, she said she was told she would never bear children. Maybe she was on the pill until that point, and then all of a sudden, 9 months later, she was pregnant.
Or something. I can't remember. It was a medical thing that she was told, like, you know, whatever she had survived, she was never going to be able to have children, and that, you know, she's like, it pushes a lot of changes through very quickly, but like it's not comfortable. She's like, and make sure you have something that's like gonna repel negativity that you pair it with, you know. So fool's gold or tiger's eye, some of those things are supposed to kind of ward off, you know, darker energies. So like, again, you know, whether you want to buy it at the intention level or you want to believe that these things actually have properties that are innate, I tend to believe, because as I've been getting sober and clearing my head and doing tons of meditation and kind of waking up spiritually, I've become way more sensitive to energies. So like, you know, I do feel different, you know, I get different feelings from these. The way like singing a different note would give you a different feeling, you know, it's that kind of thing, only in a much less physical sense, you know. So
do you feel that it's possible that it's psychosomatic? Like it's something that you want. I'm not saying that would be a negative thing. I'm just saying, is there a possibility that you believe it's going to help you, so it helps you?
You know, but I do think like being surprised by the effect, you know, and having it not be what I expect at all, you know, is like what makes me like, it feels like having had, you know, 3 years at Columbia in a science program, you know, I try to go into it like a scientist and go just like do an experiment and see what you notice, you know, and observe, you know, and if things go a little differently, then great. And if not, you know, you have a very pretty colorful rock collection, but like, you know, it's like,
I mean, I get that. It's just like you're going into it, and it's not that, like I say, control in the scientific sense, you know what I mean? It's not like you're doing a double blind test.
Right.
So I'm just questioning.
Well, and
like
if you look at some of the literature on like, you know, what the properties of these things are metaphysically, like they don't all agree, you know. But like there are some of the more common stones, there's more common ground about what they're used for. And I don't have any expertise in this stuff. You know, it's like I'm just like a really neurotic, anxious person who has a fucking backpack full of them.
I want to make it clear that it's like, it's cool that you're into it. I'm just wondering, like, those, like, do you think about those things, or do you, like a lot of people that we have met and know, take it completely on face level and faith? Or do you go, well, let's see how this goes, and then I had a good reaction, so maybe I kind of believe in it, but maybe it could be in my head, kind of thing, you know? Just wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we discussed earlier about, like, if you set the intention of, like, keeping your feet on the ground and communicating effectively and not having a panic attack, you know, having a focal point is without a doubt useful.
For sure.
You know,
I tend to lean on the...
You know, if I mixed these two up and said this one's going to keep my feet on the ground and this one's going to like keep me communicating effectively, you know, if I got it backwards, would the whole thing go all wrong? Probably not. You know? Like, so that, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
But like, you know,
I'm just trying to get an idea of like how you approach it and how you like feel about it, because like I said, we know some crazy hippies that like look at it as magic, like this is happening, and they know who they are.
But
They're
it's also
listening.
going to depend on, like, some people are incredibly sensitive to subtle energies, and some people are not at all sensitive. So, for instance, the reason I read that psychic self-defense book was I went on a Grindr meetup in New York City to a luxury apartment on 24th Street, I want to say, but there was a celebrity's wife had taken her life in the building and hung herself there. And I, hung out at this guy's apartment and, with him and his 16-year-old cousin, and it wasn't a hookup. It was just like they were drinking and like his other friend was over. It was like, come hang out with us, but like just like a rolling joints for a 16-year-old in sobriety, just like one of those look at your life, look at your choices nights, but like beautiful place. Nothing went wrong the entire night, but I went into such a like angsty, depressed, like suicidal, like it was like this. How would you describe it? It was like a mix of depression and like self-directed anger of this like angst, and I just was like ready to go, like suicidal, wanted to die for about 3 days until I figured out, I called some of the spiritual counselors that I work with to get this energy cleared. And that, according to the psychic self-defense book, is like, if you are energetically sensitive, like the experience of people that have been in a space can get imprinted on the space like a photographic plate, particularly if it's like a traumatic experience or something like a suicide. So if someone's energetically sensitive and walks into that, they'll kind of be really affected by it. Whereas if somebody's not that sensitive, like they won't even notice it. Nothing was wrong in my life at that point. So for me to be hardcore suicidal for 3 days because of that, just it didn't really make sense, So, and having it able to be cleared on a dime was what made me like, oh, this is just, So the funny thing in psychic self-defense, they talk about how the Celts are a very psychic race. 1920s language for this stuff just makes it way more.
It goes back to what I was saying about energy and everything like that. That makes sense to me. Like I people are made out of energy. It's that's just the way it is. Right. And my belief is that when you die, your energy is just absorbed into the rest of the, whatever, the world, the earth, whatever. It just it dissipates. But if you're, this sounds weird. Like I don't even like talking about it because I'm like I feel like I'm saying, yeah, this is what happens, but I don't know. This is just kind of like a thought I wouldn't even say I believe it. It's just a thought that I've had. If we're all made out of energy and everything is energy, then how insane is it that if our life is snuffed out in an instant, how insane is it that our energy isn't left behind? In a sense, you know what I mean? Okay. But yeah, it just I've always had a hard time. Science has always had that. That
facts.
Yeah, science has always been like tap me on the shoulder and gone and I'm like, oh yeah,
Ryan,
sorry, I'm coming back.
I'm
coming back.
Science, because
just dipping my toe in the water.
Einstein saying matter and energy can be converted back and forth. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you're on. You are very much aligned with one of the best scientists that's ever walked the earth on that front.
You hear that?
I think that's a bit of
right up there. It goes Einstein, Ryan Bosch. So I can get on board with like 80% of what you're saying. I think that there's a good possibility that that's the case, and you can see that, like you can feel electrical energy. Some people are more sensitive to it. I actually kind of am electrical energy. If a TV is on, but like let's say the cable's unplugged, TV's on, nothing's playing. Like let's say it's on the DVD player, I can hear it from the other room. I just hear it. I don't know what it is. It's not really like sound, but I can kind of tell.
The same thing. Yeah.
And it doesn't work anymore with flat screen TVs. It was tube TVs, older TVs. Yeah. I could feel that the TV was on.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a sense that you can describe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a scientific measurable thing. I was like, am I fucking crazy? And then a couple times I said, Matthew, I want you to turn the TV on and off either 3 times or 5 times. And he turned it on. He was like 5 or 6.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I think he was 5 or 6 when we did this. And he turned it on 3 times. And I knew that he turned it on and off 3 times.
I can describe it.
Yeah.
It's just an incredibly low frequency hum.
Yeah.
That's all I hear. Like a low frequency.
It's something that's just vibrating your bones, not necessarily your fucking...
You can't hear it with your ears. You hear it like in your mind almost.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah, but that has a scientific measurable response.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like halfway to what you're talking about.
Well, and
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's exactly what I'm talking about because, like, you have the visible spectrum of light, but then there's like, infrared, ultraviolet. There's a whole lot of light that's not in what our eyes can biologically perceive.
And there's a spectrum of what humans can see.
Right. You know what I mean? So
women see, I think it's 50 something more greens than men.
Huh.
Yeah, and it has
money.
No,
women love money.
No, yeah, it's something.
And kale.
Jamie, look it up. See if I'm making that up.
Okay.
It was something like that. It's an evolutionary thing from. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you believe in evolution. Do you believe in evolution?
Yeah.
Okay. We just needed to establish that
was
baseline.
Kind of you to ask it that way. That was but
in a very condescending, "Are you a dummy?" way.
Well, and it's funny because some of that stuff you'll go creation and evolution are flip sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and they very well could be.
Like you create something, it may evolve, and that thing may create something.
Yeah.
It's just like.
Yeah, whether or not God stuck his finger in, stirred it around, and got things moving, we're pretty sure that dinosaurs evolved into birds. But there's this weird evolutionary thing where the monkeys that we are descended from started seeing colors in different spectrums to see more available food. And it's reds and greens specifically.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's an interesting theory, yeah.
I have a pure third eye activation frequency here.
Perfect.
That says warning, extremely effective and powerful meditation.
Yeah, by the way, it's called ASMR, Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, or all these videos on YouTube.
Oh.
Where some of them are relaxing, some of them help you sleep, some of them are supposed to make you come.
That's funny. Yeah, it's like... Yeah.
There's a lot of it on YouTube. Yeah. It comes up all the time.
Have you tried binaural beats?
No.
Because this is supposed to be, some people argue it's pseudoscience, some people argue that it's, very legit and very useful. But if you set two different frequencies, one in one ear, one in the other ear, it's supposed to make your brain waves change between, alpha, beta, theta, delta waves, whichever.
I mean,
some of the tones are just, they have this really, it's anxious for me. And then other ones, they really do lull me to sleep, and I don't know.
Hypnotism is a proven thing.
I don't know if that counts as hypnotism, but it's
it's like a form of it. So if you believe hypnotism is possible, why can't that be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Well, and for me, the absolute is really just what has your subjective experience been with this thing? Test it out. Don't swallow it, but don't write it off either. And just go, hey, I'm gonna give it a try, and then I'm gonna compare notes with other people that have given it a try. That to me is interesting, but also. I try not, I love comparing notes, but I try not to push anything on anyone, because I think that's really backfires more often than not. Because anytime you try to, pressure someone to do something, it typically makes them just want to do the opposite. For sure. But it's, for me, the thing that I've had the most luck with is energy healing. That has really shifted a lot of things for me, in terms of my emotional health and my ability to stay even keel. I to this day have no logical explanation for how some of this stuff works, but subjectively, it's done me a world of good. So
we're gonna get fucking. Is this a YouTube thing? Are they monetized?
I don't know. All right, so you hear that? Ooh,
yeah.
That's the one. All the other shit in the middle is just. Yeah, that.
I wouldn't want to listen to this because I hate it. If it wasn't for the fucking pan flute, I might want to listen to it.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
You want to hear the wackiest thing that I get into? Is it? Have you ever seen people who channel different entities? You know?
No.
Okay. There's a documentary called Tuning In that is spirit channelers in America, and the idea is basically like if our consciousness is at, you know, a certain kind of frequency, you know, there may be, if you can form sort of a bridge with, you know, it could be angelic beings or off-world beings or people who have passed away, you know, you can kind of like have your consciousness connect with their consciousness, and then you act as a channel for the information that they want to impart through you. So like you would probably like, you'll hate the idea of this, but you'll love the documentary.
I'll check out the documentary.
Watch Tuning In, dude. It's really entertaining. And like, you know, the one woman, Wendy Kennedy, is like without a doubt my favorite, but she channels this ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective, which like sounds like the craziest thing you've ever heard.
I can't wait to fucking watch this.
Yeah.
Ninth dimensional Pleiadian.
Especially because we were talking before about Wild Wild Country.
Yeah.
It's fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
But the thing that's so fascinating about that is it's not like the Waco thing where they were obviously crazy,
right,
and he was fucking everybody, and it was just a cut and dry cult. This is just like all the things that they're saying are fine.
Yeah.
They're all fine.
Yeah.
And there were some people estimate 700,000 people that were following this dude's teaching. 700,000 people across the world. They were putting out cassette tapes that people were listening to in their fucking cars in the 70s. That was when people were like, hey, yoga's a thing.
Yeah.
That was when that shit's people, when Westerners started getting interested in Eastern medicine and healing. And then it just went off the fucking rails. That's what's the interesting thing to me. Like, I love watching shows like Ancient Aliens because I don't believe anything they're saying, but I love how much they believe it. You know?
I just think it's an American thing. I think.
Yeah.
Just us taking something. Wow, this is really nice. Let's multiply it by 1,000.
Yeah.
You know, like alcohol and pot.
Yeah.
You know, pot, for instance, grown. You know, what we have now is nothing.
I
like
think
what
that's
it was.
all because of prohibition, though.
We are very extreme in the ways we do.
Oh
things.
yeah, look at American IPAs versus regular IPAs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just
we're gonna make it 9% alcohol and 12,000 IBU. Yeah.
We're not about balance. We're about smashing the. You know, we're not about
hit it with a hammer. Just hit it with a hammer a bunch of times.
We're not about picking the lock. We're about driving a car through the door.
Yeah.
The subtlety.
So we got a little off the rails there. But so what the fuck are we listening to now?
Our 90 and 936 hertz pineal gland activation, the third eye opening solfeggio frequency by
have
Beats,
you heard of the
by
Ajna
binaural
light?
beats.
The what?
The Ajna light.
Do you hear that high pitched?
Mm-hmm.
The constant high pitch?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the frequency that you're supposed to hear. All that other shit is just fluff.
See, this is relaxing. I would listen to this. I wouldn't listen to the other
There's
thing.
a lot of them.
Because your third eye's opening.
Is it? So, have you heard? You haven't heard the Ajna light. What happened to Bill? He hasn't been doing it anymore. I haven't seen him over there for months.
It's possible that it didn't take.
It could be. Anyway, the guy next door, he had this thing called an Ajna light, and he would do pineal gland activation.
Oh, at Dreaming Goddess.
At Dreaming Goddess.
Oh yeah.
And we had him on the show. We had him on the show, but he like specifically said if you've been drinking, like you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like kind of my thing on the show is I drink. So he did it, and it's kind of like a half a trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little, it's like slightly hallucinatory. You see a lot of colors and things like that, and people describe it as very similar. It's like a light DMT trip.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not taking drugs. It's all happening from your pineal gland.
So it's
doing
it
it just flashes this light in your face. And
your eyes are closed?
Yeah, my eyes are closed. I was trying to relax as best as I can, but this chair, like the way I was positioned, was fucked up. So I didn't get the full effect.
But
I actually went back.
Yeah.
I went back to him, and I still couldn't quite get the full effect because I concentrate very I can relax myself, but then I'm very fidgety. Even when I'm sleeping, it makes Brooke lose her fucking mind. I like roll around and shit. I can't be comfortable. Like for this to work fully on me to get the effect that people have talked about, I'd have to be laying down, and this would have to go on for an hour.
Yeah.
Because I did get some sort of feel of something. Yeah. I felt like I was weightless. Like the only weight I had, I use that like term loosely, in my body was in my head. Like everything else felt numb from the neck down. I couldn't feel a thing.
And you see a bunch of colors.
Yeah, colors.
Do you see colors there? No, it's just a white light.
Yeah,
right?
it's very kaleidoscopic, and you know you see certain images and everything like that. It's very interesting to do, and it feels like this. What was this? 10 minutes or 20 minutes?
This was you did a 10-minute on the show.
I did 10 minutes. It felt like
yeah.
It felt like a minute and a half, 2 minutes maybe.
Huh.
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
Wow.
So might be cool for you to try it if you're interested in it.
Yeah, no, I've been actually. I have his card. I've been meaning to get in there and give it a try, but the timing hasn't worked out. But, yeah.
So the interesting controversy around this is that you can't test to see if a human pineal gland is producing DMT. You can't test that because you would need to get someone into that state and then put a needle in their brain. And check it.
No one's signing up for that shit.
It's illegal for them to do that because there's no, you can't volunteer for it if there's no proof of it's going to save your life or that kind of thing. But they've proven it in rats.
Mm-hmm.
So it's widely accepted that the human brain creates DMT.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that dreaming is very linked to DMT, and I'm very interested in this. And Joe Rogan is actually putting one of those lights in his sensory deprivation tank.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so
he's gonna lose his goddamn mind one day.
He takes a bunch of edibles and then floats around in salt water in a sensory deprivation tank and just sees God for an hour. Like that's kind of what he does.
Okay.
So I want to try it, but it's just I've never been at the point where it's like I can spare $20 on that. You know what I mean?
I was curious after it. I was just so curious. But here's the other thing: when I went for the actual session, where I sat in just in the room, dark room, and just sat in a chair for like a solid week, I would say. Afterward, I felt amazing.
Huh? Wild.
Like anxiety was tempered. I felt, I just felt very positive, very like energetic, and everything like that. It wore off, of course, but. I don't know if that meant anything.
And again, it could be psychosomatic because you wanted that to happen,
sure.
Or it could be a legitimate hormone release in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are both equal possibilities. And the girls over at Dreaming Goddess, they compare it to like taking a nap on the beach, like how good you feel after that. That's just a very relaxed. Yeah, if you fall asleep in the sun for 6 hours, that's not what I'm talking about. They just describing like taking a nap on the beach on vacation, and you just feel great for days afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I get that. And there is a lot of evidence that could show that is actually doing what they say. But it is conjecture. There haven't been studies. This Ajna light has only came out a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple hundred of them in existence.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very small company, and it takes a lot to go, this is what's happening. But the problem is that you're going, this is what's happening with no research whatsoever to say that that's actually happening. You can't sit in an MRI with that thing going.
Mm-hmm.
The science isn't there.
Yeah.
It's not possible to look at what's going on in the
that's
brain.
Where my mind went was like if you did an fMRI the way they can with dopamine levels or
you
whatever
couldn't.
else,
You couldn't because that's a light. It's electronic. It has metal in it. You could not do that.
They'd have to build it into the MRI.
They would have to build it into the MRI. It would have to. It would be a pretty large undertaking, or you would need to do something with fiber optics that would strobe the same way so that the light source was actually 20 feet away from the machine. This is why nobody's ever done this.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be interesting to see what's going on in the brain while that's happening, because there's definitely something happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have, like I was talking before about double-blind studies,
Mm-hmm.
you have somebody, I forget who it was somebody on Rogan's podcast who was talking about like hallucinogenic drugs and stuff. He did the Ajna light, and he was like, I was seeing some crazy colors and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And he didn't know that was going to happen before he went into it. And the guy who ran it was just like, no, it's just white LEDs. There's no color involved whatsoever. That's all being created by your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely something going on. But the thing that you don't know is the only way that you know that it's beneficial is your own personal experience, which is
subjective.
It's subjective. It's not a large enough sample size. There's no science to say what is happening, but we know something's happening, and I find that really interesting. So I would like to experience that.
Well, and they've done similar things with, I think it's Alzheimer's, that the neurons get kind of gummed up somehow, and like there's a certain pulse of light that the studies have been conclusive in rats that it can, I don't know, reactivate whatever protein it is that gets rid of that gunk. Yeah. This is something I read probably 2-3 years ago, so I'll like loosely paraphrase, but I do think that's an area that I find, like, this is just something I find comforting for the most part, and I feel like I'm like, novice to intermediate with stones and crystals and that kind of stuff, and I enjoy it. I find it useful. But the idea of like sound and light as having an agency beyond just like the listening experience or what you experience through your eyes, to me is really interesting. Because some of the new agey stuff I've been listening to recently is talking about the human voice as a tool for healing, and a tool for moving energy, and I was thinking, when I first got sober, I used to just like go in the shower when I was in treatment and just like sing my guts out, but I really felt cathartic and like I was moving some shit out, and I'd feel lighter when I got out of there. So like the idea that like, of, having really felt what it's like to consciously and deliberately move energy out, and there's different ways to do that, whether it's breathing techniques or even exercise or like drinking lots of water will flush your system. I don't know, that's my next like frontier, I guess I'll say, is like wanting to explore like sound healing, and then as a modality of energy healing. I just find it fascinating, like even more than the stone stuff. I just think it's like, but not one I know much about. But if you do want to hear something wacky and weird, you should look up light language activations. But it's going to be the weirdest thing.
We have time.
No, we're out of time. Yeah. That's your homework, but
yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely of two minds of a lot of things. Like for me, those are rocks. And that's all they'll ever be. But
they're really nice rocks.
They're really nice rocks.
And one's not even a rock. One's a piece of wood.
From a scientific perspective, everything does exude a certain amount of radiation. It just does. That's a measurable scientific fact.
Okay.
So if other people are more sensitive to it and it does whatever it needs to do for them, that's cool. Totally fine. It's just not really my deal. That being said, I mean, I meditate almost every day. And I do that. I mean, I'll do that like in very short intervals. Sometimes I get stressed out. I breathe. And, it's something that I learned doing martial arts as a kid. And it's really affected my life. And to be honest, like I had insomnia for almost a decade. And if I couldn't meditate or drink, to be honest, I really can't sleep. When I don't drink, I have to meditate for an hour to fall asleep. And it works. So it's definitely, there's a lot of efficacy to a ton of these practices. And I just want to make sure that the audience that's still listening doesn't think that I'm just like, fuck all that. Because I come off like that quite a bit. But, like you were saying about trying to draw out reactions, sometimes you just have to kind of, when I talk to some people, I'm like, this person is totally full of shit. And there's no point in it really engaging them sometimes when it's just like they're going to believe what they're going to believe, and like horoscopes and stuff like that. I'm just like, no, sorry. But, as far as like healing stones and stuff, there's an argument to be made.
I fucking love horoscopes. I think they're so much fun.
You want to know why I think it's fun?
What?
Telling people that they just ignored a 13th symbol or whatever.
Yeah.
They just said, well, there's 12 months of the calendar. Let's just leave one off. That's how astrology. I don't even know because I hate astrology.
It's Osifer or for
something or other. But yeah, when astrology first started, they just left one off.
Yeah, we did a whole thing on the show about it.
Yeah, and then also the fact that they didn't account for the leap year, which is science. They didn't account for science for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of this. So I'm not actually a Capricorn. I'm something else because we have our dates wrong. Our dates are completely off.
Yeah, Ophiuchus is the other one. which shifts everybody's.
Cosmopolitan magazine is the authority.
It was a really big.
No, it was a big
thing.
It was
Yeah,
actually originally a study and a paper put out by a NASA scientist.
But it shifts,
and it
all
like
these
blew up
astrological
blew up about two.
No, I remember this thing. Everyone talking about their new sign.
Yeah,
it was like
that was where it all came from. But it hit the mainstream and it became a big thing, and then died, and now everybody's ignoring it.
Yeah,
it's just like if you want to pretend that there are rules to this, like you can't just ignore shit. You know, if you want to pretend like it's science, you can't ignore the fact that we've discovered 6 or 7 planets that are larger than Pluto in the last 100 years. You know, all of these very, very small planets. If Pluto affects what's going on with your science, these 6 or 7 other very small planets in our solar system should too, right?
When's your birthday?
May 26th.
And what's your sign?
Gemini.
May 26th.
I'm such a Gemini.
You're actually now a Taurus.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I was born a month late, so I should have been a Taurus in the first place.
You were born a month late?
Yeah, full month.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in there.
Didn't feel like
just didn't want to
entire fucking month being like 5 more minutes.
Aren't you?
Umbilical cord. Yeah, just hitting the snooze button in there. Just
wow.
Yeah, so.
You were the smart one.
Yeah,
your mom wasn't like, get it out. I'm not doing this.
She was. I was a cesarean. I did not come willingly, and it wasn't pretty, but it was
I got switched from Aquarius to Capricorn, and none of it fits.
None of it fits anyone. It's made up.
No, the Gemini thing.
It's made up.
No.
It's made up by people. It's documented that it was made up by people.
This is science.
Yeah.
A NASA guy said so.
Yeah. No.
And that's it.
His entire article was based. It was like a paper or whatever, but I don't know. Doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter. But anyway, there's a good comedy bit in there somewhere. You being in the womb for 10 months.
Yeah, well.
There is definitely. That is the seed of 12 minutes right there. For sure.
Well, I thought this was funny, but I said this to one of my spiritual counselors at the treatment center I went to, and I was like, I was born a month late, and I had my first bowel movement in the womb, which was why they had to take me out of there, and I was like, which is a pattern that continued in my life until I got to rehab. It's like, I am staying exactly where I am until something life-threatening forces me to make a change, and like even then I didn't go willingly, but wow. She was like, yeah, and then she had a funny alternative theory, and she was like, oh, that's where your trust issues come from, because they failed you in the womb, because it's unsafe to let a baby go a month past its due date, and that's why the birth was so traumatic, and that's why my coming into this world was really traumatic. So like, in that, who's the guy that has those, Eric Erickson has those stages of development that you're supposed to resolve, over the course of your life. And the first one is trust versus mistrust, and that's from ages 0 to I think 1.5, So
Sounds
she was
like a
like
name you'd give to the police.
Eric Erickson.
Eric Erickson.
Yeah, just look at Eric Erickson's like stages of development. It's the psychosocial stages of development.
Trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, and like half these words I'm not even sure of. Identity versus role confusion, intimacy versus isolation, how do you say the word?
Generativity versus stagnation.
Oof.
Yeah.
Ego, integrity versus despair.
But they correspond with different ages in life. Like this is
so generativity versus generativity. Come on, generativity versus stagnation. So he's talking about generating something versus not generating something.
Well, the basic virtue in that would be considered care.
I mean, this is stuff we did in high school psych. Like, this isn't woo-woo stuff, This is, like, really, this has been applied to a lot of, like,
For example, stage 5 is, or actually, let's something that we're...
Let's take trust versus mistrust, like, as an example.
Number 6, ages 18 through 40, is intimacy versus isolation, and the basic virtue of that is love. I don't know what that means.
He's like, I read the words, but I don't know what he's saying.
Failure to successfully complete a stage can result in a reduced ability to complete further stages and therefore a more unhealthy personality and sense of self. This sounds like Dianetics to me. This sounds like Scientology. Almost.
Could be.
In a different way.
I mean, it's very wordy unnecessarily, which always is a red flag for me. But I never took psychology, so
No,
I
you
don't know.
should-
Well, it is
you should
like
read
they
into
consider it
this.
a theory. They consider it a theory of psychosocial development. So it's not like written. It's
this is not
written in
fringe
stone.
stuff.
This is
It's just like, and what she was saying, the reason that she came to this issue was because she was like, you have such insane anxiety. And she goes, Louise Hay, which is more in the woo-woo new agey stuff, she goes, anxiety comes from not trusting the flow and process of life. And I heard that turn of phrase and I was like, oh shit, like I don't trust life itself. Like it's not just I don't know. She goes, you don't know who to trust, but like you don't trust life itself. And that was true for me. And going, oh, maybe trying on that belief, for size, going, oh, maybe I should trust that there's a flow and process to life. I instantly relaxed a little bit, but she was like, someone broke your trust. Who broke your trust? So that, you came into the world, you trust, in a way that they had already, like the trust versus mistrust is when you're from 0 to 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really meet your own needs, so when you're hungry, you need to be fed, you know what I mean? So if you learn to trust that those basic needs are going to be met, then you wind up like in your psychosocial development on track. And if those needs are not met and you're left to cry when you're hungry or ignored or neglected or have lots of trauma in that phase, you don't wind up trusting the world around you like for life until you get, enough therapy to go back and resolve that. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, but I do have a counter argument from a philosopher that we know called Frank 289100. Do you want to pull it up here?
I've read some of his work, but yes, please.
So, can you pull my computer up here? Oh my God. So Frank is he's a YouTuber, and he is a commenter on some of our videos, and he likes to yell on the internet. And he goes, imagine how stupid people truly are to believe that anxiety is a genetic disorder. Believe that, and it is like spitting at God. God did not make us in his image and then give us 10 commandments to follow, then put genes in us to harm us. No way, people. Anxiety comes from the contaminated food supply laced with chemicals, and especially coffee, which is nothing more than a narcotic that is the root cause of anxiety and fears, even to the point of people committing suicide.
And now this
what do you have to say to that?
This isn't fringe stuff. This is psycho.
Yeah. This guy is a plumber from Brooklyn. And he's a prophet and believes that the world is 6,000 years old.
Say that I should be a plumber when I grew up because she would go, "You should be a plumber. Plumbers make great money."
Yeah. So apparently, the caffeine will eventually build up in your fat and muscle tissue. After years, the caffeine concentration in the blood that leaches out to your tissues, compounded with that daily 2 to 3 cups of coffee, will reach sky-high levels, creating all sorts of emotional problems, including health problems like AFib and tachycardia, where they damage your heart by doing ablations to correct it. And people who need pacemakers don't need them. The coffee is the culprit, and also add into the mix chocolate. They're too high in caffeine.
Yeah, that's
Do you think that's the source of anxiety?
Do I think it's the source of anxiety? No, but did I have a couple panic attacks when I farted? I have had panic attacks after farting, particularly at work when I'm in the cubicle and I think I'm in the office alone, and then my interns are there, and I'm like, son of a, because when you fart, like, oh, the coast is clear, like you're just like yodeling from a mountaintop, like out your ass, but like no, anyway, and then you realize someone else is in another cubicle, and
I do that with headphones on. Like I'll be in a
makes me
room and I'll have
anxious,
headphones on and I'll fart hard and I'll turn around and somebody's like there. They're not obviously being like, "Hey, man, you farted," but they heard
this
it.
deep, like we start anyway. Yeah.
I'm just glad it came. I'm glad the show came back around to what the core beliefs of the show is.
Yeah,
or the core theme of the show.
Like
is
right
farts.
now, we're straddling between joining the Church of Satan and siding with this guy, because he dug a hole in his backyard and it changed my fucking life. I really thought the Earth was 4 to 5 billion years old, like science says. But he says it's 4 to 6,000, like the Bible.
Yeah, I can bring it up real quick.
That is, I can't prove either of those things wrong from where I'm sitting right now. But
I mean, before I was like, the Grand Canyon has layers. Those layers show billions of years. Good. Thank you, science. And then Frank fucking dug a hole in his backyard, changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's that easy, is it? But you don't get anxious when you crash from too much coffee, though?
No.
Oh my
it doesn't
God,
affect
I get
me at all.
Panicky. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like, well,
some people, I mean, it really does act like an upper. For me, it's always been kind of, it helps when I'm tired, but only to like if my normal is here saying 0 and I'm -30, it can sometimes bring me back up to 0. But if I'm at 0, it's never going to bring me above +10. I don't know. If this is a scale I just made up.
If I drink a ton of coffee, I'm euphoric, but then when I crash, I am panicked.
I'm like that with sugar.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So
if you notice, you'll see the dirty soil that's on the top, and below you start to see the soil come clean. If the Earth is 5 billion years old, this dark mulch should be 10, 20, 30 feet thick. It's not even a foot. How is the Earth 5 billion years old? It's the biggest bullshit ever told to man.
I do not follow his logic, but
he's got like 22,000 views on this video.
Most of them are us.
He keeps commenting on all of the videos that we had with the Church of Satan.
Okay.
That were on the show, and they're hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, and he also always refers to Satan as a woman, which we find interesting.
That is interesting.
Some little filly broke his heart.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Some little filly. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
We have to end this fucking
time.
thing. We've been going
Last plug though.
2.5
if anybody
hours.
has a LGBT faith story that they want to, talk to us about, please email me at godlovethegays@gmail.com.
Oh, all right. There you go.
So if you got a story that you're a listener, you want to share it, we'd love to talk to you. So thanks.
Hold on, I'm writing it down so I can.
How many gay people have we had on the show now? It's been 3, right? Not
The
counting you.
Are the other 2 cute?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Tanner was 1.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Caitlin
Yeah.
is
I
gay.
think
I'm
she
pretty
is.
positive that Aiden is gay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like a lot of people.
I was just wondering. I thought you were gonna be like 6. We're just keeping a tally of how tolerant we are.
Oh boy. Well, Mike, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
It has been enlightening.
One of the best conversations we've had on the show. For
This
sure.
is a long
It's
one,
good to
man.
hear.
We just couldn't
Went
stop.
hard tonight. Yeah,
Went deep. A lot deeper than I thought we'd go.
Well,
I
I'm
thought it was
very
gonna be
excited
ridiculous.
to work with you on this, and I really think that if we get like a little thing
Well,
together,
I never said
to-
yes.
You did. It's fine. Yeah. If you suggest anything to him and you explain it well enough and give him enough time, he'll come around.
Easily swayed. huh?
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
Do you want your Instagram out there too?
You can. It's Hey Mike Doyle. That's
Hey
it.
Mike Doyle on
That's it.
Instagram.
Yeah.
godlovethegays@gmail.com.
Yep.
If you have any kind of
Hey Mike Doyle is just my personal account. It's going to be a bunch of cheesy jokes and unflattering photos, but you're more than welcome to check it out. So. Sorry.
better than mine.
Yeah, he just bitches about people who give foreign money as tips.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm going to Canada with us.
Yeah.
I'm going to Canada.
He's like, I'm going to Canada with $4.
No exchange.
Half of it's Nepalese.
Just do 1, 2, 3, 4 at a strip club and go home. Like that.
All right. So next week, not sure, or do we know what's going on next week?
is Monty Music.
Hey, Caitlin.
Yeah.
So we get to talk to her. We haven't. That's going to be an interesting one.
She's
Lots
the
to talk
former
about that. Former guitar
player
guitar
from
player
Bay
of Bay
Patrol.
Patrol. She's got her own thing. It's called Monty, and she just released a new single. It's called Bitch. Check that out. Spotify, iTunes. You have to pay for it. You just have to.
Yeah,
I can't find it anywhere else, but
no,
I get it.
She sent me sent me a link to listen to it. I thought it was on SoundCloud or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't
it was
look.
good though. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like what you'd expect.
Yeah.
From her. But and then also August 6th we're doing the Stitch and Bitch at Darkside Records, 611 Dutch Turnpike in Poughkeepsie.
Like so much fun.
With Knitting
You
is
should
Metal,
definitely go. Yeah.
Tony Odell from Knitting is Metal. Check her out on Instagram.
I just had an idea.
What?
I'll tell you after.
Say
the
it really
show.
quietly.
That's our cliffhanger.
We should have JB put Saint Anger on while we're
Yeah.
knitting.
She's not going to watch this. We need.
She
to do
might.
That.
I mean, she might.
She's not.
But we'll know if she listens.
Yes, we need to do that. We need to do that.
Especially
is there
if
a special edition?
If he could fucking locate like a vinyl copy of that album. Darkside Records pretty much exclusively plays in the shop like records.
Uh-huh.
And that'd be really cool. You don't know the backstory, but some of our listeners do if they've been paying attention.
Ooh, there's a deluxe edition.
I'll ask JB about it. I'm sure they have one in the shop that they could play. Anywho,
all right,
we'll be there. Mike says he'll be there.
I'll be there.
Yeah, but just jump on. Just type in Knitting is Metal in YouTube on Facebook, and you'll be able to find the event. You can also go to the Dead Radio podcast page, and we just shared it a bunch, and she just changed it up so that we're now a co-host of the event. So all the information that you need is in there. Just click on the link, and it will take you to a pre-registration page. You don't have to pay anything to pre-register. It's just a couple things so she knows what materials to bring. You pay $10, and you get like a knitting kit, and she will teach you how to make a dick hat.
Or something similar.
Yeah.
All right. That's all for this week. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks,
It was
guys. Yeah.
enlightening and factual.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, so we're not done quite yet.
We forgot he was just. So what's with the chalk on the table?
Yeah, okay.
We forgot to do titles.
How did we do that?
I don't know. So we're back.
So what's the title?
Even though, so we title the episodes.
Oh.
Yeah,
based on
we
our
have to
conversation.
choose real quick.
Yeah, so we have L.A. is Florida without the obesity,
And motorized scooters. Don't forget that. That's the key.
All right, so we'll add that if we pick it. I think we're better though. God, my handwriting is terrible.
Oof.
I don't read the books. I just watch the TED Talks. Nothing against Kylie and Minogue, but
I do like that one a lot.
and then Mike's conversation rock.
Yeah. I like the Kylie Minogue one.
I'm going for Kylie Minogue, but you got to spell it right.
I kind of like
I
that.
can. I can. I think I know how to spell it. And hashtag Mike's conversation rock
Yeah.
for sure. All right.
Yeah, so look up how to spell Kylie and Minogue and spell it correctly.
All right. That's how you
Yeah.
do. All right. Now we're done.
Now we're done.
Officially.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
All right, goodbye.